most people in this space, but we found NFTs about a year ago, and then we said, you know what, we're really going to create a company. As we get more connected, as we go into the metaverse, what we're about to do is meeting new people, having real raw conversations. We think it's going to become a lost art. So we're here to make that happen, to bring it all to you, and to help you expand, learn, and grow. And we came up with a very simple mission statement. That mission statement is to bring back the lost art of genuine human connection. And I got one last thing to say, and I'm dead serious when I say this. I genuinely, and Maddie genuinely believes we were put on earth to do exactly what we're doing now. We love doing this. We love meeting new people, and it just gets us so freaking excited. We think you as family, and we love you all. So, at the base and the heart of midlife crisis, not gonna lie, it's Mikey G and Maddie Mintz. And why it is because over 30 years ago, I met this crazy SOB at the 4th grade bus stop. I swear to you, when I first laid eyes on this dude, he was perpendicular to the ground, or not perpendicular, like horizontal to the ground, hanging at a 90-degree off a stop sign. And I was like, what the hell did I just get myself into? And since that, we had a budding, flourishing relationship, been best friends our whole lives. Obviously, life got in the way. You go to college, you get married, you start businesses, things happen. Fittingly enough, our midlife crisis brought us back together, hence the name. We're older than most people in this space, but we found NFTs about a year ago, and then we said, you know what, we're really gonna create a company. As we get more connected, as we go into the metaverse, what we're about to do is meeting new people, having real raw conversations. We think it's going to become a lost art. So we're here to make that happen, to bring it all to you, and to help you expand, learn, and grow. And we came up with a very simple mission statement. That mission statement is to bring back the lost art of genuine human connection. And I got one last thing to say, and I'm dead serious when I say this. I genuinely, and Maddie genuinely believes we were put on earth to do exactly what we're doing now. We love doing this. We love meeting new people, and it just gets us so freaking excited. We think you as family, and we love you all. So, at the base and the heart of midlife crisis, not gonna lie, it's Mikey G and Maddie Mintz. And why it is because over 30 years ago, I met this crazy SOB at the 4th grade bus stop. I swear to you, when I first laid eyes on this dude, he was perpendicular to the ground, or not perpendicular, like horizontal to the ground, hanging at a 90-degree off a stop. What up, folks? We're back, and this is a massive day. Twitter Spaces are on, Maddie. I got you, buddy.
All right, Twitter Spaces on.
Dude, people are pumped that we're back on Twitch. We're freaking seeing a lot of emojis. We got subs going. Damn, it feels good, huh? We figured, you know what? Might as well maximize our exposure. We have close to 6,000 followers on Twitch. We got rid of it. Tried the YouTube train, but then Harris Heller, one of the guys that we follow, said he was going back to Twitch, and it made me think. And then what's the best part about Web3, Maddie? You can speak to your consumer immediately. And what did the community want? They wanted us back on Twitch. So here we are.
Community wanted us on Twitch. I mean, and so let's just for a quick second, Mikey, let's just break that down. So you saw the video from Harris Heller, and this isn't just about, well, he did it, so we're doing it.
No,
He articulated some good points. What were the points that resonated with you and really made you think about this?
So YouTube is an amazing search engine, right? And so they have a prime position to take Twitch and make it nothing, because they could take it over tomorrow if they wanted to. But what they haven't done is made it easier for streamers on YouTube. Even though YouTube's platform searchability is insane, right now we're at the top of the list on crypto streams, and people can find the different content they want for streamers on Twitch a lot easier. And from a creator standpoint, being able to have channel points, how easy it is to subscribe, get paid, have people help us out if they want to help us out, get paid while we're streaming. And then finally, honestly, like I told you, bro, I talked to the community, and the community is what set me over the edge. When I got a
Yeah,
unanimous vote to say, please come back to Twitch, I said, let's do it. Because that's what the beauty
there it
about
is.
Web3 is. And that's what I think Brand 3.0 is as well, right? We're able to talk to the consumer like no other time in history. So we might as well utilize that. That's me. And then I think with all of that, I convinced you to go over the edge.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I was hesitant because I feel like it was such a big decision to leave Twitch,
Right.
and but then it's like, you know what? Mm, and let me say my hesitations here, so just kind of so it's out there. I, First of all, Twitch when it comes to doing the stream is great. It's fantastic, right? As you said, YouTube, great search engine. Twitch has a lot to learn from YouTube about how to create a search engine
Right.
and find content, right, and list it.
Yep.
But YouTube has a lot to learn from Twitch on how to run a live stream. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? And make it
exactly.
engaging and entertaining. And so in the meantime, why not, use the best of both worlds? And then the only struggle though is that logistically, you guys hear it all the time from Mikey, you don't fall off a log and then just stream to 5 different things and have good video and good audio and everything's in sync and you can still form community and whatnot and get clips. All of that takes a lot of stuff behind the scenes. And so we
Tons.
just want to make sure what's important to Mikey and I is at the end of the day, we want this to be about our guests and good conversation, good fun, our community being able to interact with you all in chat because that's what it's about. And if we're busy, especially Mikey, because he's really doing the lion's share of this, because he's hosting the stream. If he's so focused on trying to manage 10 different, pieces of software running simultaneously, we kind of lose a little bit of it. And so that's where I'm at. I'm hoping that it can kind of congeal in a way where it still is a good flow. But yeah, that's where we're at. But we are back. We're excited and it's gonna be a real nice night. How you
Yeah.
doing, Mikey? How's
Good,
the weather
good.
out there?
Miserable, man. It's been raining like hell. I've never seen it rain, like here before. Well, I'm supposed to be in sunny San
What?
Diego. I had rain coming down at a 45-degree angle today. Flood warning, flash flood warnings. Like this just doesn't happen here.
Yeah, that's rough. But is this just kind of like San Diego goggles? Like, is it really just like you've had maybe 24 hours of cloudiness and now you're just like, oh, woe is me?
No, it was bad. I mean, it was.
Because let me
Listen,
tell
man,
you,
I grew up on the
in the
East Coast with you.
MD,
I know what a
in the
bad storm
MD,
looks
it's
like.
been cloudy for like the last 10 days here.
Right,
It's
right.
just been that, like, you don't see the sun, everything is gray, MD winter, man. And so, I just like still probably a little bit better in San Diego. We're just gonna throw that out there.
Yeah, it's tomorrow. It's gonna be sunny and 70, so it's okay.
Oh, see, you got it. It's gonna be
Tell
right back
tell the
to heaven.
community a little bit about your vacay, and then we'll get straight into it. Because
Okay.
CK he's just sipping water very very patiently right now, and I love it.
It's fantastic. Yeah, man, vacation was amazing. So one of the cool parts about, when you're in because the weather's perfect where you're at, right? So you're already in vacation mode at all times. You can just decide to go to the beach anytime you want. But as in Maryland, it's like everybody's hunkered down now. Are we going to get the freezing rain or the snow or what's going on? So going down to Florida what was it, like 8, 9 days? It
Yeah,
was amazing, man. And it was like beautiful weather, sunshine. It was about 73 degrees. That's where it averaged. Yeah, sun was out. People were swimming in the pool. It was wild, man. It was just like people out, birds chirping. Great time spending time outside. Just a lot of fun. Very relaxing. Great way to celebrate New Year's. And it was crazy because I forgot it was winter. you know? I was like, "Oh, yeah, now I gotta go back to, like, actual winter time." And so, yeah, man, I left when I got on the plane, it was 72 degrees, sun was shining. When I landed in Baltimore, 41 degrees, cloudy, rainy. I was
Mm.
like, "Oof, oof,"
Ooh,
a little
we
bit of
love that.
reality. So, but yeah, man. So hopefully soon here we're gonna be, I'll be there permanently, and that's gonna be fantastic. But it was a great vacation. Thanks for asking.
Awesome. Well, with that being said, man, we got a good show. CK is a guy that I met a few months ago through just some of the many awesome connections that we built in this space. Had a chance to give him a call up, immediately could tell this dude doesn't F around. He's got his shit together. But before I introduce him and ask him the world famous midlife crisis question, Maddie's got some info that he's going to drop for us. Go ahead, Maddie.
Yeah, man. So yeah, as Mikey was saying, I mean, listen, it's cool to see people that have their stuff together at any phase of life, but it's rare to see people that have their stuff together young. And I think we can all relate to that because if I thought the way I thought now when I was 18 years old, 19 years old, 20 years old, I'd be Elon Musk, right? And so, but that's the difference, right? I mean, there's a reason that that's rare. I needed a lot of life to kind of teach me the old ways, right?
Right.
To get there. And so CK this is, man, he's got it going on. So here, just to give you some bullet points, CK owns a Web3 consulting agency where he helps onboard IPs. It's a different side of the business because he's working with the companies that are old school. So his job is to say, I know you're in Web 2. I know you're ancient. I know you're still like using a horse and buggy, but I gotta bring you forward into the future with what's happening in Web3. And he's done that with some pretty um, I'll say high status clients, right? And some of the clients include Warner Records, Bose, CNN. He's currently doing a project with the Smurfs. And so he's out there helping these brands move forward, kicking and screaming into Web3, and we're glad that he's doing that. But a cool little connection is that we had Cryptoria on our stream with their project, and he actually helped with them as well. And so kind of a cool, little triad there. The circle's getting a little bit smaller in Web3. I like that.
Yeah.
Uh, he also has a media brand called Builder's Block. We'll get into a little bit of that, but we'll kind of keep it high level. But that's something that he's very excited about. And at the end of the day, here's what he does. And this is what good entrepreneurs do. People who are thinking, they solve problems. And when I asked him, he said, "Man, I'm a professional problem solver. That's what I do." If you didn't know, he's a college student. He is studying right now. He's studying financial planning and entrepreneurship. And a little fun fact about CK is CK gets bored easily when it comes to hobbies. So he kind of rotates and he gets bored easy because he has this really awful trait of just being too good at things. And so then he gets bored at it. So he picked up yo-yo, fun little weird thing. I never thought that was a thing. Mastered it, was probably at the Yo-Yo World Championships, if that's such a thing, don't know. Then he started bowling, mastered that, and now he's into rock climbing, and he's been rock climbing I mean, multiple times a week, enough so he's got calluses on his fingertips, and you know that's the real deal. And so, yeah, man, he's basically a serial hobbyist. What do you call that? Is that a thing? I'm making it a thing right
I
now,
like
Mikey.
it. That's a good way to
Serial
say it.
hobbyist. I just created that right there. It's who knows, but if it's not something, I'm trademarking it. But yeah, man, CK, welcome to the show. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. Excited to jump into it. Thank you for that intro.
Oh man, dude. I mean, here's what's good. I'm glad you're not our age, or that all we do is be going through your accolades before we even got a chance to talk to you. So,
Exactly.
um, yeah, thank you for being young and not having a long enough resume yet, because you've already done more than most people do in their life, and you're still in college. So, welcome to the show, man. And I think this is going to be a great conversation.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. Thank you.
happy you're here, CK. And I mean, by at your age, I had started no companies. I was starting the beginning of consuming a shit ton of alcohol. blacked out many a nights at Penn State doing nothing with my life. So props to you, buddy. You're starting the life the right way. And, Maddie and I it took some time. I learned a lot. I worked hard, but I just wasn't ready to mature at that age. I was still about having fun. Now you're about to sit on a podcast with us and talk for a couple hours about starting things. So to get that conversation started, man, we've got one question, and that's all we do here at Midlife. We ask you the one question. It's going to turn into a fruitful, budding, beautiful, long-lasting conversation. And that question is, how did you get to the seat you're sitting in today? Please give us Star Wars Episode 1, 2, and 3. Star Wars 1 has started as early as 4 years old for some people. Some people go to middle school, some people go to high school, wherever you want to take us, and we will let you know if we need more information. So let's have at it, man. I can't wait to hear it.
Love it, man. Love it. Well, let's get started in college. I think that's kind of where everything kicked off for me. Throughout middle school and high school, I think I was a pretty average student. I didn't want to be at school. The typical things. I actually played lacrosse in high school, but yeah,
Okay.
my parents were super on me. They were kind of micromanagers, and it drove me nuts. And so, I got
Ooh.
to college, had a little freedom, and just started learning.
Well, yeah, let's rewind though, because I think that is important. So,
Mm-hmm.
talk about your upbringing, and you said your parents were. I'm assuming what you mean by that is just they were strict. But like let's break that apart. Was it strict in terms of they just wanted you to succeed and get good grades? Were they that same way when it came to sports and lacrosse, or was it just to try to make sure you get into a good school? Where did some of that come from? Was that because of their background and maybe their professions, and that's kind of why they are the way they are?
Yeah,
Give us
you're
some
not
some of
getting.
that.
I apologize, CK. I let you start wherever you wanted, but you're not getting off the hook that easy. We need to know a little bit about how CK got to college.
Yeah,
Yep.
man. Yeah, for sure. Let's jump into it. So, yeah, I would say, I think a lot of it actually comes back to like my parents' history. My mom, she was the first person in her family to go to college. So, I actually had a
Hmm.
conversation with her about a week ago because I've been making a lot of like bigger decisions around my education, which I'm sure we'll get into later. But
Sure.
but yeah, with that, education was such an important part of her life, and I think it was honestly just hard for her to just like let me experience high school and college the way I wanted to, because for her, it was her kind of about a week ago,
Sorry about that.
pioneering for her family and being the first one, and it's a great thing. It was awesome that she was able to do that, but like my experience was completely different. I come from, a very blessed family, like I'm blessed to have them paying for my education, and that's just kind of the way I've been raised. So I've had different
Yeah.
opportunity, and with that, coming all the way back to her upbringing, she's kind of always been on me about, getting, straight A's or A's and B's, and just kind of performing the best I can in everything I do. And I am completely for that, and I think I'm incredibly thankful for it now. But like looking back, it was so hard for me to really do anything while I was in high school, because I think a really big part of human nature is pride. Really taking pride in really anything you accomplish.
Yeah.
Whether it's small or big, and it's really hard. I would say. Just to give like a dumb example, let's say I was going to go do my laundry, and like I was about to go do it. I had it planned, and then my mom comes in my room. And is like, "Hey, Carson, go do your laundry." Like it completely takes away that pride of you
Mm,
actually
mhm,
accomplishing
mhm.
something yourself. And that was kind of, I would say, my whole experience growing up was, like I wanted to be proactive, I wanted to do these things, but I could never really give myself credit for them. And so it's really hard for me to, in my opinion, and looking back, it was really hard for me to like really come out of my shell and kind
Yeah.
of innovate in the way I do now, because I could never really take credit for anything I did, because my parents
Mhm.
were always on me about doing stuff, whether it's applying for college, or really everything across the board. So that's yeah, I would say that's kind of where all that came from.
Okay.
Interesting. And so when you were going through kind of your childhood, it seemed like you had a pretty regimented way of life. Where did that come from your parents? Like, can you do a little deeper dive into maybe your mom and dad, or your like you said, your mom was very proud of the college accomplishments. Anything else to add there on why you think they were that way?
So I also come from a Christian household. I'm Christian myself. That's a huge part of our belief system.
Gotcha.
Okay.
Is I mean, I just hold Christian values, and I think, I mean,
Sure.
I'm incredibly blessed. I think it's a huge part of how I've gotten to where I am now, and I'm so thankful for that. But it also comes with, values, and I think a
Sure.
lot of those values kind of drove our household as a whole, and it's really great, and I'm so thankful for it now. But like at the time, it sucked because
Right.
like
Sure.
I'd want to go hang out with my friends till like midnight, and my parents are always on me about like, hey, what's going on, what are you guys doing, maybe you should just come back at 10. We don't know what they're going to do. Like it was micromanaging.
Sure.
Right. And so I like that answer, and I'm assuming this is gonna be probably, the faith and the household be your answer for my question. But we had a friend in high school that had an insanely strict parents. And when he got to college, it was the opposite effect. This dude just went fucking nuts. And he was like, he had I think just been pent up when he was a high energy person for too long, and it went the opposite way. What do
Yeah.
you attribute to? Because that is, I hear a lot of stories about the opposite, being pretty regimented growing up, and then once they get to college, you don't know how to handle yourself, and all hell breaks loose. What are your thoughts around that?
Yeah, man, 100%. I think that's a really big thing I see. Liberty University, where I study, is a Christian college, if you don't
Yeah.
know that. And with that being the case, I mean, I see both sides of the spectrum so much. I see probably the most laid back type of people, but also a lot of the craziest people. So,
Yeah.
no, I completely get that. I think I would attribute, I mean, a lot of that to, I would say, to my faith and the people around me.
Yeah.
I think, I mean, the people around me is probably the biggest thing, but also my faith. Like I really am a Christian. I really believe these things, and I want to. I mean, I want to stay true to that. I have these values, and I think where the line's drawn with a lot of this is often you have two types of people. You have the parents who are forcing their kids into their value set, and you have parents who
Hmm.
are fostering a similar
Interesting.
set of values within you. And I think, I mean, I love my parents. I think they did a great job of that. I mean, I stay true to my values, and I think that's a big reason. I didn't go to college, I didn't party, I didn't do any of that. I really wanted to start my life and start thinking smart rather than just doing stuff. Because I think, I mean, with me being financial planning and entrepreneurship, I always kind of had an entrepreneurial mindset, and I mean, a lot of it came down to, again, thinking smart rather than just going and doing a ton of work. Because people work 40, 50 years of their life. I think if you spent like a year of that actually thinking and actually like planning and figuring out the right way to do things, it would get you so
Yeah.
much further. And my entire story and everything I've done is an incredibly large testament to that. I think an interesting thing I've been thinking about, this is a little off topic, but I mean, I've been thinking about this for a while. Just the definition I give the word maturity, and this is kind of something I bring to all portions of my life. I define maturity as valuing your future self equal or more than your current self, and this is really something I try to do across the board. Whenever I'm doing anything in business, it's I could be playing video games with my friends right now, or I could be figuring out how to make tomorrow better for myself than today. And that's a like foundational principle, I would say, in pretty much everything I do.
Can you say that again? Because I don't think I've ever
Yeah.
heard that.
Yeah, I'm still trying to figure out if it's right. I've asked like 5 people and no one's disagreed with me yet. But I define maturity as valuing your future self equally or more than your current self. So essentially, like looking out for your future. Like
Yeah.
it could be the principle that,
Right.
hey, I could go
Right.
get drunk today and it'd be a lot of fun, but it's not going to be fun tomorrow. Or it's not going to be
Yeah.
fun 5 years down the road when you have, say, an addiction or just that sort of deal.
Yeah.
Really really valuing my future self as much as my current self.
No, I like that,
Yeah.
and I think that is the right mindset. What the real test in life is can you hold that mindset once your future self in life kicks you below the pants 1,000 times and you still need to get back up. That's the
Yeah,
true test.
but I
Uh,
think the crux of it though is essentially delayed gratification, right?
yes,
Do you eat
yes,
the apple
Mm.
now or do you plant it and have a tree one day and have apples forever?
right.
And it's a difficult thing to do. And if and to your point, if you value your future self more than your current self, you plant the apple.
Yeah.
And I think that that's just something. And this is, by the way, and there's many ways of saying this, many proverbs around this. Biblically, many stories about this. Right. The idea is hey, it's not about now; it's about playing the long game, and that's what you're doing by making those decisions, right? So I think that's very, very good.
Yeah, I'm with you, man. It's a beautiful way to say it. So take us through, and thank you
Well,
for go ahead,
and
Maddie.
I have a couple questions here on this
Yeah, go for it.
because so I can relate a lot to this, not because of my upbringing, but because I ended up in I had a lot of friends that have been to Liberty University. I was involved with a lot of youth group programs and whatnot. So when you say watching what happens once people go away to college and kind of seeing the different angles there, um, what I'm curious about, and don't feel like you have to get into like a theological discussion, but it is interesting how people can sit there and you can have two people that go to the same church, live on the same street, and one goes to college and upholds values that they were instilled in, and other just completely abandons them. And it's interesting.
Mm,
And do you have any thoughts on maybe what are some of those things that help separate it? Because I'm very interested in how to say it. I'm gonna butcher this, but like there's essentially a story about two twins, and one is a billionaire and one is homeless. And when asked why the one is a billionaire, he says, "Well, my father was a drunk and abused us." And when the homeless twin was asked, "Why are you homeless?" he said, "Well, my father was a drunk and he abused us." And so the same seed there can push one person
hmm.
into greatness and push another person into a kind of abandoning themselves and giving up on that. Any thoughts on that? Because I'm very fascinated by it because I have witnessed that as well.
Yeah, man, for sure. I think one of the interesting things about Christianity is, I mean, you can't actually tell where anyone is, you know? I mean,
True.
from a spiritual sense, you know, like from the outside, I mean, there's really the outside of the book and the inside of the book. You know, you have no clue.
Yeah.
There's so much more on the inside, but all you can really see is the outside. And I think that's the core reason. And I mean, from a spiritual sense, you know, a huge part of Christianity is actually having a relationship with the Lord. You know, it's not about you know, spiritual disciplines. You know, everyone talks about go read your Bible, go pray, go do these things. And I know so many people who do those things and then go get drunk and then
Yes.
go like do whatever.
Yep.
You know, that's such a common thing. And I
Yeah.
think a huge reason for this, and I actually had a great conversation with someone last semester about this, but a huge part of being a Christian and like actually is actually fostering the relationship. You know, it's supposed to be a relationship with our Father. You know, it's not about just reading the Bible. Yes, that's part of it. That's one of the ways you can connect with him, but that's not what it's about. You know, it's about actually falling in love with the Lord and having that legitimate relationship. And I think that's where the line is, you know, because I mean, as we've been saying, you know, there's so many people that, you know, they go to church every Sunday, they go to youth group on Wednesdays, they're reading their Bible, then they go to college and they're getting drunk every night, they're partying, they're
Yeah.
doing whatever, you know. And
Yep.
that's I think the real line comes between those who stay true to spiritual disciplines and those who actually have relationships and are actually in love with the Lord, you know.
No, that's well said. Thank you for sharing that. I think that's a fantastic insight, and I wanted to be able to give you a chance to kind of share that one that is the Great Commission to be able to share those things. And yeah, no, I think it's fantastic, and I think, like you said, ultimately it comes down to if it's about a relationship, it's easy, but if it's about rules, it's almost impossible. It's kind of like the whole point of the New Testament as a whole, right? But yeah, that's fantastic. Good stuff, man. Okay, so you had this upbringing that was a heavy influence on you. Is that where, by the way, are we talking back then? Is that where the crazy hobbies started?
No. I would say I'm trying to think. Yeah, no, that all started in college.
Oh, okay. All right. So, so any hobbies? Were you a gamer at all, or anything like that in high school? Or you said you played
Yeah.
sports, right? College, you played lacrosse, right?
Yeah, yeah, I was a lacrosse player. I played Fortnite quite a bit.
There it is.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I would say those are my main 2 hobbies. I just did kind of the typical high school things beyond that.
That's awesome. No, very cool. Okay. And so then how did the was it like I'm going to Liberty or I'm going nowhere? Were you looking at other options? Did you want why choose to do online versus going there?
Yeah, yeah. So there were a few options. Whenever I was approaching college, the different colleges I was looking at primarily Elon University, USC, and
Hmm.
Liberty. And Liberty has a program called College for a Weekend where you essentially get to go and participate in the student body and be part of the community for a
Yeah.
weekend. And I did that, and I actually met. That was I didn't like officially meet her, but I've been dating my girlfriend Hannah for 2.5 years at this point, and I that was really my first experience really connecting with her was at this event. So like first of all, I had that, which was an incredible experience, and
Yeah.
it's that's
Sure.
again a huge thing I attest, me not going off the deep end too is
Right.
having these grounded people around me that.
Power
So
of association. Well said.
yeah, 100%, 100%. But yeah, the real decision came down to, whenever I was looking at the different colleges, they all had their advantages. Liberty, it was a Christian college. That's why I was primarily looking at Liberty. I think the student body related a lot to me. I really enjoyed the college for a weekend. I enjoyed the community. And it wasn't, I mean, from what I saw when I did college for a weekend, it wasn't people getting drunk. That wasn't the norm. And I think that's one of the big differentiators between like Liberty as a Christian college and a lot of other colleges is you go to a more traditional secular college, the norm is you have people getting drunk, partying, whatever, whereas you go to a Christian college and you still have those people. In fact, there's quite a bit of them. It's not hard to
Yeah.
find, but it's
Yeah.
not the norm. And that's really the differentiating factor. But whenever I was figuring out which college I want to go to, the real thing that it came down to me was the faith aspect. With it being such a big part of my upbringing, I mean, just looking internally and praying, a huge part of it was, do I value my faith or do I value my money? And that was the end all be all question, because Elon is a much better college. They have a great business program, they have
Sure.
great placement after you graduate, but it's not Christian. And I
Hmm.
have heard the horror stories of people going off the deep end. It's so common.
Yeah.
I being a very introspective person was well aware of that risk of that potentially happening. And at the end of the day, I was like, what, I'm going to follow. I mean, I'm going to follow my faith. I think my faith will be better fostered at Liberty University than it will be at Elon or USC. And so that's why I chose Liberty. And I did study in person for 2 years. I'm just moving online this semester.
Got it. Okay. And just to push back a little bit, right? And by the way, I'm challenging you from a place of I, because I have mentally gone through these gears myself. Um, so you're talking about valuing your future self more than your current self, right? And we're also talking, I mean, you're on this stream because you've already accomplished a tremendous amount in a very short period of time, respectively to what most people do in their, by the time they're your age and on. You obviously have shown an incredible amount of discipline. My question is this. You said Elon would be a better school. What is the balance between you exercising valuing your future self more than your current self and doing that and being able to do it in a because um do you think or would your fear that you would maybe lose yourself if you were to do that, or is it just the fact that it could happen kept you from that? How do you balance that? Because you see what I'm saying? Like
That's a good question.
there's almost a little bit of like, well, you might have had something to gain by doing that. And the reason I ask is because I think this is a question that people ask are faced with all the time,
Yeah.
specifically people of a faith at all, right? Because you could look at this with your job or who you marry or where you live or and so how do you balance that? Like, is there a part of you? How do you balance that out? To because like you said, you could be valuing your future self more than your current self. by maybe getting the better education. What's your thought process around that?
Yeah, for sure. I think the biggest thing with that comes down to identifying what I want in my future self. I say valuing my future self over my current self. That at its core comes down to what do I want my future to look like. And what I want my future to look like is a good relationship with the Lord, married, family. That just
Sure.
not going off the deep end. And I didn't think I was going to go off the deep end. I didn't think that was the
Yeah.
thing that was going to happen. But at the end of the day, my faith is number one on that priority list, not
Okay.
money, not really anything else. And that's ultimately why I made the decision. Does that answer your question?
No, it does. It
I
does.
think it
It
does.
absolutely does. Have you ever seen the movie? It won an Academy Award called Chariots of Fire.
I've not.
You should watch that movie. It's a movie about a guy who is very, very good runner and has a chance to go to the Olympics. Um, but because of his faith, he refuses to run on Sunday.
Mm,
And on all of his qualifying times, he clearly was the fastest person. He was going to win the gold medal. It was basically a shoe-in, but
mm,
he decided to not do that because the symbol of him standing up for that meant something. And the whole movie breaks it down. It's based on a true story. It's fascinating. But anyway, just I think that is also part of that debate, right? Our choices reflect who we decide to be, and that choice also is heard by people we may not even know we're listening. So
Right.
anyway, it's kind of a
Right.
cool thing.
yeah.
That's cool.
Fantastic conversation. And I think it really does set us up because one of the things you just said that was very interesting to me is you've got this hierarchy, and obviously faith is number one. You put money all the way down at the list, but so many people in this space, it's the number one driver. And it is, Maddie and I talk about this a lot too, whether it be faith, whether it be going through tough circumstances, learning, growing. The ironic part about being truly wealthy is a lot of that comes when you reprioritize the things that matter in life, which is spirituality, mind, body, soul, being kind, paying it forward, all these things that we know we should do, right? But you have really built a name for yourself in this space in a short amount of time, not driven by money. So what I'm interested in is going from this. We have a pretty good foundation of your mindset and your upbringing. What drove you from picking Liberty and now finding let's bridge Web 2 into Web 3 and learning about Web 3? So that was a very long-winded way of saying let's move forward. But I think we should start with how did you find Web 3? And then I'm interested to hear the conversation evolve into what drives you, knowing that money isn't one of your top priorities.
Yeah, 100%. So the way I got into the space, I was sophomore. Yes, I was a sophomore at Liberty University, living on a hall. And one of the guys who lived down the hall from me, he actually, I'm gonna go back a year, freshman year. I had this buddy named Cross. Really good friends. He was my gym buddy. Before I got into rock climbing, before I got into a lot of the weird hobbies, gym was my first hobby. I got
Nice.
to Liberty. I was a pretty skinny guy. I was like 145, roughly 6 foot. So I was really skinny. Got to Liberty. One of my friends, Zach, really loved lifting, got me into it. We were going every day. It was awesome. And Cross started coming with us. And yeah, he started to get some really bad wrist pain. It was really bad. And he just kept pushing through. And I told him, like, you need to stop. You need to stop. And eventually he ended up with tendonitis. And it was so bad, he had to stay home from a semester of college because he couldn't open a water bottle. He couldn't open a door. Like, it was incredibly bad
Wow.
Wow.
tendonitis. Yeah. And this was
Jeez.
right about when NBA Top Shot and stuff was just getting kicking. And, and yeah, he was a big RuneScape player. And he found someone.
The
I don't know like the
RuneScape
full story
player.
here because
RuneScape
it's
is
the
There's
keeps
RuneScape
coming
people.
up with
Dude,
everybody up. Jeez.
CK, I can't tell you how many people have referenced RuneScapes on our podcast. It's unbelievable to me.
Wild.
It's
Okay. So
awesome.
he's a RuneScape player.
Yeah, he's a RuneScape player, and someone told him about NFTs. He bought some like what was it? It was some Top Shot NFT, and it shot up to like 70 grand. And he bought it for I think like less than 1,000. So it was just a crazy onboarding experience for him. And I mean, just being completely honest, I wasn't even really in touch with him during this time. You know, we would text occasionally, but I didn't know he was into NFTs or anything. So he had this crazy entry into the space. You know, he started building a name for him and you know, trading and all that stuff. And year goes around, you know, he missed, that would have been the spring semester, come back in the fall semester, he's back on my hall, we're back together. And during the year I texted him because I saw he posted on his Snapchat story, and I never use Snapchat. I think this was like a god moment because I literally never use Snapchat. I check Snapchat like once a month. I checked it, and on his story he made a post about flipping some random digital collectible. It was like it was terrible art. I didn't even know what it was, but he flipped it for 5 grand. And I was like, you know what, this seems pretty cool. At the time I was super interested in finance. You know, I was kind of getting into more so stocks, that side of investing. I was really interested
Mhm.
in it. At the time I was looking at investment banking. But
Yeah.
yeah, I DM'd him. I was like, yo, this seems sick. We should talk about it when you get back to Liberty. He was like, yeah, I'm down. So get back to Liberty, and he starts telling me about these things. And this was right around when Creature World happened, if you remember that. So that was
Mm-hmm.
actually my first NFT. He was telling me about it. I was like, you know what, I don't really know about this. And he just kept kind of pounding it into me. We had a lot of conversations about it, but he started sharing about the tech, and the tech's really kind of what hooked me. You know, I like to consider myself a visionary. I think that's what makes me, I mean, pretty successful in a lot of the things I do. Is I'm really good at just looking at point A and understanding where point Z is and how to get there. And I mean, that's exactly what I saw with, you know, Ethereum as a whole, and specifically NFTs. You know, the idea of digital ownership is so incredibly valuable. You know, I actually host a Twitter show myself, and we have tons of people from tons of different fields come on with like tons of different expertise in all of them, you know, from all of these different aspects. You know, I've had my space co-host, actually, he's a microbiologist, and
Mhm.
he talks to me like endlessly about the potential and what NFTs are going to do for microbiology. And it's that way across the board, you know. And
Right.
that's kind of what I identified from step one. I was like, oh my gosh, this is so influential. This is such a powerful thing. You know, the way you can hold a glass of water and own it, you know, the way you can own a car or own a house, you can do that with something digital. The fact that you can actually own it, like, it seems like such a small line between owning it and, you know, like Apple saying like you own your anything digital, you know. If
Right.
you get what I'm trying to say, like the line feels so small, but it's so significant. Like there's so much stuff that can actually happen with that, and that vision I kind of locked on to, and I understood it. And he got me into NFTs. You know, my first buy was a creature. I had absolutely no idea what I was doing, but I hopped on a Twitter space. I was listening to Danny Cole, and I don't know if you've heard him on a space. Incredibly passionate dude, especially like way back in the day when Creature World was launching. Just so passionate about what he was doing, and I was so entranced because I came from, I mean, kind of a finance background, considering like that's what I was studying. You know, I'm used to these people who are very business oriented, and generally you just don't hear passion in people's voice. You know, you don't hear
Right.
people, I mean, really, really, that they don't. No one ever sounds interested in what they were doing, and that's what really blew me away, and like really got me so entranced in the art. Was he was just so passionate and so confident in everything he was doing. I just wanted to hold his art, and so
Yeah.
I talked to Cross, and it was actually funny. It was a gas war, and I didn't even get a creature. I tried to go in and mint, and they had like this whole complicated minting mechanic where you had to walk through a virtual world up to like a creature, and you would talk to him and go through this journey and eventually end up minting. It was a really cool experience, but I wasn't able to mint. And my buddy Cross was able to get three because he knew what he was doing. And they started pumping. They got up to like half an ETH, and I mean, I got really lucky. He was like, you know what? I want to get you into the space. I'm gonna sell it to you for mint price. He sold it to me for mint price, and then it
Wow.
shot up to like 2 ETH, and then Shaq bought one, and this was when like influencers would like blow crap up. So then it
Yeah.
went up to 4 ETH, and you know, I'm a college student. For reference, my last like what's the word? My last legitimate job was as a firehouse line worker, meaning I took the sandwich meat out of the steamer, put it on the sub, and then wrapped the sub and gave it to the customer. So that was
Uh,
my last job. You know, I'd probably my
Bro,
my
don't you
entire
downplay Firehouse subs. Those
oh, I could
subs
not, dude.
are so freaking delicious. Mm. Yes,
Matt's
I
a
want it
very
fully
simple eater.
involved. Fully involved, bro.
I
Fully
would
involved.
say Firehouse subs are okay.
Bro, okay. What's not to go on a tangent, but what subs have you had?
What subs have I had? I mean,
You've
I don't
not you've
know.
not had the Italian
Mike's
or
a
the turkey bacon
foodie.
ranch. I
He's
can
one
tell
of
you that.
those.
I'm
He
like
wants
a
prosciutto
yeah.
and
Oh my god.
aged
I want to go
Gruyere.
to an Italian delicatessen and have them make a sub for me behind the counter there. Listen,
You say what you want,
Firehouse
man.
subs are not bad. Would I pick Subway over Firehouse subs? Absolutely not. Would I pick a holy shit, we got a new subscriber, Star Girl. Thanks for subscribing. It's just so weird to be on Twitch and see these sub things come back up.
So no.
I just
Finish your
wouldn't pick
statement, Mike.
Firehouse subs over a traditional Pennsylvania sub shop. That's all.
All right. CK, put him in his place.
I'll I'll let it slide. I'll let it slide. I will
Okay.
say, I mean, you're objectively wrong from a purely objective standpoint. You know,
Yes.
I've interviewed many people, and I would say one of my greatest abilities, more so than anything, is getting people into stuff. You know, I say I have all these random hobbies. I don't do these alone. You know, I'm a very community oriented person. When I get into something, I get everyone I know into it. Like I kid you not, I have a posse of 20 people I rock climb with between home and college. So like I get people into stuff, dude. Firehouse. That's
Fire.
that. I got everyone into Firehouse. I have a friend
Dude,
who goes like
love
3
it.
days a week, and all of them, I guarantee you, would pick the
So,
turkey bacon ranch.
dude, oh god, it's so good.
So good.
All I'm saying is, don't you downplay that. Don't downplay working at Firehouse. That's the real training. If you value your future self, you did everything right there.
I love it, man. I
But okay,
love
so
it. I'm
keep
with
going.
you.
I'm sorry. So your only real job experience, Firehouse subs, and now you got this NFT. It's worth 4 ETH. What's going on?
Yeah. So at the time, that was roughly 12 grand. And, you know, probably my entire lifetime earnings up until then, you know, working every summer was
Right.
like 4 grand total. So I tripled that in, I think, less than a week.
Yep.
And it was just mind blowing to me because now I was like, oh my gosh, I locked onto this vision. Oh my gosh, I'm good at trading. You know, my first trade was was a 100x. Like, what are the odds of this? And
Yeah.
yeah, no, I was a terrible trader for reference. I ended up selling. I think I sold at like 2 ETH. It wasn't that bad, but we'll get to it as we continue. I mean, you'll see. I was a really bad trader. I lost a lot of money
Yeah,
before I
we're
actually
not here
figured
to
it out.
as traders either. We're here to show about people in the space and in projects. But Maddie and I will go on record, not the greatest traders in the world.
Nope. Nope. Not at
Well,
all.
that's that's good to hear. That's good to hear. But yeah, I mean, it was a mind blowing experience to me. I think it was really good for a few reasons. You know, first of all, I had that really big win off the beginning. It also gave me some disposable capital. You know, I didn't immediately get rugged. I have so many friends who I actually my space co-host that I co-host with Bonglow, his first 5 projects I think were rugs. So like yeah, I was I was really lucky to get on
Mm,
Yeah.
a pretty good one at first, as well as actually understand and hear conviction from an artist. Because being a finance guy, like I didn't care about art. You know, I thought creatures looked kind of stupid, but I really cared about his passion for what he was doing. You know, that was such an interesting thing to me,
hmm
and that's I mean that's kind of first of all, that's how I lost a ton of money because I invested off of people being passionate in their own things, which I mean, generally, I think it's good, and I think it's a great thing that a lot of people don't evaluate because you know if you're not, I mean, if you're not fully invested in what you're doing, you're not going to be successful.
right.
But yeah, that's
But
that
it's
was
easy to
kind
get
of
duped
my
in this
entry.
space. Yeah, passion as we've found. Thanks for the sub, Dare. By the way, Dare is watching every second of this podcast. He
Yes.
wanted
Dare
us to
Vader.
inform
Love it,
you
man.
that Vader's here every lockstep of the way.
Yep.
But yeah, it goes to show you, like you know, and I'm interested as we talk about this that you know the NFT space back then, passion got you 3 or 4 ETH, but then you know eventually that's going back down to 0.2, if not less. Now it's a totally different ball game. So let's go back to creatures and take us from there.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. So I think my next purchase after Creatures, which is my highest conviction investment thus far, was the Heart Project. Have you heard of Hearts by chance?
I have heard of it loosely, but I'm not intimately aware of like what it was all
Mhm.
about.
Yeah. Yeah, makes sense. So it was, I mean, it was a really cool vision. Honestly, for that one, I would say again, very, very emotional trade. Again, I didn't know what I was doing, but I loved the vision. I loved Aiden Colin, Stefan Mier, the people behind it. Incredibly connected people, really passionate about actually making a difference in people's lives. It wasn't about really making people money. It wasn't about any of that. It was about like actually having change,
Right.
and influencing people's lives in a positive way. And they had a ton of ways they did that. It was primarily based around like creatives because, with their connections, because for reference, Aiden Colin, he's a photographer in LA, really well
Mhm.
known. He does like the album covers for tons and tons of big artists. He did one. I really like the artist Halsley, if you know her. She has
Yep.
my favorite album by her was photographed by him. So he's done a ton of big stuff in the LA scene from a photography and videography standpoint. So, a lot of his vision was built around being able to come into the space and give creators within the community the opportunity to collaborate with these people and to actually create things together. So like the one example of them doing that, they had an artist in the community named Prentice, and they essentially funded, flew him out and filmed a music video for him along with the community. So the idea there was, not only are they giving him this opportunity, but all of the other people within the community have the opportunity to actually participate in this. So he flew out. I think it was 8 or 9 hearts that were getting paid, industry rates to be a part of this, and they had. I think it was Benny Blanco was in it too. He was like a feature and he was in the music video. So it's like it was honestly just such a great opportunity for so many people. And for me, this utility was completely useless. But I understood his vision and I understood where it could go and I heard the conviction. And that's really why I bought in. And I love the community. I got so emotionally invested in it. And I mean, it went really well for a long time. I'm going to skip through, I mean, quite a bit of time here, but yeah, I ended up just trading hearts for a while. I got super invested in the community. And yeah, I think I held it for, I mean, I've held hearts for well over a year at this point. But there was a pretty crazy event probably 6 months ago. No, more than that. It would have been, yeah, a year ago at this point. I think it was beginning of January. They announced a partnership with, I believe it was Edison Chen, someone very influential, I guess, in the Asian markets. Honestly, I didn't really know who he was, but
Yeah.
obviously people in Asia did because they went from 0.05 to 2 ETH in a night. And that
Wow.
was further assurance. I held 7 hearts. So now, you have this, I guess, yeah, 20-year-old at the time.
Right.
First I had Creature World and I had flips in between there. I didn't really make much money. I think I was in Dower Darcells and a few others that were pretty good. But yeah, I was in Hearts, it was surreal experience because this was at the time when I was getting a lot of people into my hobbies. So I actually onboarded like 5 people on my haul and I got all of them into Hearts. So it was a crazy thing because
Oh.
I woke up, it was random. I woke up at like 3 a.m. that night and I got a text from my buddy and he was like, Hearts are at 2 ETH. And like he's the guy that like just texts me BS like all day. Like he'll just text me like probably like 2 days a week that hearts are at like 5 ETH. And I always have to check to be sure, but like I know
Right.
he's
Right.
messing with
Right.
me. So like I was like, he's probably just messing with me. And I check it. And it's just this surreal moment where like I wake up and it's like 3 a.m. and I made 70 grand. And it was like I didn't even know what to think because again, 20-year-old, 5 grand to my name, and I made 70 ETH. And the real fault at that point, I would say, a lot of it was, it was a huge emotional investment. I've learned so much from that trade. I think that was the most I've learned from any trade. I sold 3 hearts, so I did cash out some, but I was so passionate about the community. I love the community. I couldn't just sell myself out of it.
Sure.
And
Right.
it was, yeah, I ended up losing a ton of money. I bought on the way down. I bought 5 at 1 ETH. I bought 5 at half an ETH, and now they're at like 0.05. So I turned like an insanely profitable trade into I think like a 10 grand loss. And this was all before I got into the creator side of the space and
Oh
before I
man.
really kind of learned what I was doing. But I think honestly, I think I don't know if I should say the lesson's worth it because that was a very expensive lesson, but I learned so much from it. And I don't think I could really be where I am now without that, because that
Hmm.
deep emotional investment really showed me like the power of the technology to change lives, not to make people money, because, I came into this space to make money, but that's not really what it was about, for me. That investment was purely emotional, because I saw
Yeah.
this vision, I saw how he could help people, and I was like, you know what, if he helps people, I will make money on this. That's the nature of it. If people are getting
Yeah.
value out of this, people will buy it, the asset will go up. Makes sense in theory, and I mean it did for a while, but obviously I traded it terribly because I had no plan, and again, really really emotionally invested in the community. But yeah, that was kind of that story. Do you have any comments before I continue?
Yeah, and so you gotta tell us from that moment in time. Now I know there is a lot of learning lessons in between them, but looking back at that, is it as simple as don't let your emotions overcome just the pure financial gain? Any other lessons from that moment in time before you move forward?
So I think there's two sides of it.
Yep.
There's an investment side of it, and there's like a community side of it, because it was a terrible financial investment, but it was a great emotional investment. I attribute the majority of the reason I'm here to Hearts, not because they made me 70 grand in a night and
Ooh,
then lost me 10 grand,
yeah,
but because they showed me again what technology can do to change people's lives.
yeah,
And I mean, they really did, dude. There's one post you can find on the Heart Project where they gave an artist a chance, and he was like, he filmed a video of himself like getting the reaction, and he was literally like in tears, just saying like thank you for like 30 seconds straight. And that just like resonated so hard with me, because it's, for me, and just looking at it, the idea of, for me coming from being interested in finance, kind of the way I see finance. I think finance, for a large degree, in a lot of these industries, besides being creative, is, if you work hard, if you do your studying, if you learn, you will most likely be successful. I think that's the way a lot of these industries go. But, trying to be creative, trying to be an artist is not at all that way. I
no,
see an artist as like a full level of transparency, and like really putting everything you have into this art, and then you let other people value it. And that is, I couldn't even imagine doing it. That's such a scary thing to take. I mean, really everything, something you care so much about. And again, like this guy, his art, I think it's so sick, but like he cared so much about this character in this world that he was creating. And he had no audience, and just getting this small audience, this small community of the Heart Project, just, I mean, it was just such an influential moment, I know, in his life.
right,
And just seeing that was an influential moment in my life, because it showed me that, this isn't just people buying pictures of monkeys. This isn't
right,
that's
Yeah.
not that's not really what this is about. There's really a lot of potential here.
right. And so, what was the second part, though? You said that was the
Yes.
emotional journey. What was the other part?
So the financial portion of it, obviously, was a terrible financial trade. Biggest lessons from that: make a plan. I didn't make an exit plan. Also, liquidity is king. I would say those are the two big lessons,
Yeah,
because yeah, I would say holding for the moon bag never really makes you money. I mean, I can speak from experience. I had a 7 grand bag and I had a 70 grand bag, and I fumbled both of them. And that's
right,
that's the nature of it. You
right.
can't really hold for the moon, because you don't know when the moon's going to stop. I had a guy in my hall named GM. He bought, what was it, Hype Moon. He was one of their first 1,000 buyers.
Uh
He
huh.
bought 5 grand and it went up to 700 grand. And he eventually sold it for 20 grand. So
Oh,
yeah, I
Dude.
know. And that's what happens.
Dude.
It's not.
Those are the gutting ones, man.
that's
It's
a
just like,
gut. I've never even heard of the
oof,
project that you talk about. The fact that it
oof.
went to 700 grand is mind blowing.
Yeah. Yeah. No, and that's, I mean, I've seen that story play out so many times.
Yeah.
And, if you don't have a plan, you're probably going to be the bag holder at the end of the day. And that was the financial lesson. If you
Yeah,
actually go look at my wallet, I mean, I feel bad saying it, but I flip pretty much everything. I flip everything except those. I really, really believe in the people working on it, because I mean, primarily for that reason.
Yeah.
Liquidity is definitely the big one. I've learned if you don't sell in the green, you're probably going to hold to see the red, because I've done it again, fumbling 70K bag. It's so easy to look at
Yeah.
someone like GM and be like, if it hits 700 grand, of course I'm going to sell. I'm not going to hold that long.
Right.
And then you go through it. And in my case, I went through it twice and I fumbled it twice. And
Right.
so yeah. No,
Yeah.
the way I function now, I'm a lot more analytical with everything I do. It's covering your cost basis, selling again while you're in the green. If you went and looked at some of my flips, they are pitifully low. People making memes about people making like $1 to $10 flips. I'm that person. Go look at my wallet history. I flipped 10 NFTs yesterday for a $10 profit. So no, I'm no stranger to that.
Right, right, right. Well, hey, listen, you
Fantastic.
learned a good lesson. So
I did.
take us from that moment in making, it sounds like you've mentioned a couple times you realize like maybe the flipping degen stuff isn't for me, but being a creator or trying to start a company might make sense.
Yeah, yeah. So it actually, I'm sure it starts very different from how you think it's going to start. So with my entrepreneurial spirit, I was actually working a side gig. This was actually one of my random hobbies. One summer, when TikTok was kind of big, there was a trend to like hydro dip crap, and so I tried it with my girlfriend. I was like, you know what, this is pretty cool. I like this. These look cool. We hydro dipped a pair of Crocs together, and I was like, you know what, I bet if I hydro dipped Crocs and I went and sold them on a campus, I bet people would buy them. And so I tried it. I went to my hall, I brought some equipment, and I just started hydro dipping shoes for people. And I was like, you know what, this is pretty cool. Again, great lesson learned because, I'm a very relational guy. I was friends with a lot of people in my hall, and just the way I ended up functioning, I made like literally no profit because I was just like, oh, you're my friend, I got you. Now I'll hydro dip. Not a
Yes.
big deal. And I
We
got stuck
know
in that
that
trap.
story.
Yeah, I think that's one most people have to learn, and I'm thankful I learned it when I was selling, 50, $60 shoes.
Right.
And
Yeah.
and so yeah, with that was kind of my first entry actually into the creator side of the space because I saw a huge opportunity to pivot and take this to Web3 because so many people have this incredibly valuable art but no way to visualize it, you know and
Yeah.
that's kind of where I went. I started actually painting shoes, again, random hobby. I learned to paint for a brief period. I wasn't very good at it. My first few pairs of shoes did not look great, but I would actually paint NFTs onto shoes, and that was kind of my first entry into the creator side of the space. I was more so doing it for a financial gain at the point because I was like, I'm going to hustle, I'm going to figure out how to build the network. I think this could be a good opportunity. If it scales, I'll hire an artist. And it started to scale. I think I'm a great salesman. I think that's one of the things that's made me so valuable. We'll get into this later, but I mean, you actually look at a lot of my story, a huge portion of it is me selling myself to people just across the board. That's what my consultancy is. I'm, yeah, that's a huge part of who I am. And so bringing this mindset into Web3, I started selling these custom shoes, and it started going pretty well. I was selling a lot of them. I started to build a little bit of my own brand off of them. I'm trying to think, I had a few notable buyers. Jeremy Fall bought some of my shoes. Toby Lasso, he bought a Weather Report pair of my shoes that he wore, I think, to like I don't know, their first event, but lots of cool stuff. Lots of cool stuff there. It was a great way, I think, to get into the creator side of the space and kind
Yeah.
of
Hmm.
try something new out. But in the end, it wasn't for me. But do you have any questions before I continue?
No, no, that will take us right there. I'm actually interested in the last thing you said. Why was in the end it wasn't for you? What happened
Yeah.
there?
So being business minded, the biggest thing and the thing that's top of mind for me is scalability. I can paint. Realistically, my time investment was about 6 hours for a pair of shoes. If
Wow.
I'm doing two pairs of shoes a day, so that's a very long work day, I'm making few $100 a day.
Yeah.
That I do not see as remotely scalable. I tried hiring artists and it worked well. They were really good. I could sell a lot of shoes, but there's still so much logistics that go into the back end. I found, and especially in a digital space where, I mean, a lot of this is fully scalable. You see Jeremy Fall, for example, he sold, I think, 16,000 NFTs, open edition, point zero 0.01, raised like 160 ETH in an evening. fully scalable business. And I'm over here putting in, 6 hours per sale for $100. Like
Yeah.
that I kind of identified that. I was like, this isn't scalable. I think it's a cool model, but I think Web3 has so much potential from a scalability standpoint. And I think when the market scales, I don't think I'm going to be able to scale. And that was kind of what did it for me, as well as other opportunities. Within the Heart Project community, I actually started alpha calling, which is really ironic because I'm a terrible trader. If you actually go look at my trades back then, pretty much all of them were losses. But it's it's interesting. I was really good at calling. I was really bad at playing on my calls. And this is something I network a ton. I actually talk to a lot of alpha callers, and this is a pretty common thing. I know so many people who are great at calling, but are terrible at calling their calls. So they'll make everyone else money except for themselves. And if you go look, and again, I onboard a ton of people. I think for a long time I was the least profitable trader on my haul, which is so funny because everyone else just bought what I told them to buy. And so really,
Where do
yeah,
you think
really
that
interesting
comes
dynamic.
from? Because that's an interesting dynamic there. You're doing all the calls. Is it because you're just so absorbed in the research you just don't actually follow through with it? What's going on there?
Planning.
Hmm.
Always have an exit strategy. I never had an exit strategy. I would have the entry, I would do my research, I would go so much deeper than anyone else would go. I would connect dots that people wouldn't connect. And then I wouldn't sell when I should sell, or I'd sell before I should have sold. And that's
Oh,
kind of the story
interesting.
across the board. Plus the emotional investing. I would
Right.
get emotionally invested in a project. I wouldn't cover my costs the way I should, or I wouldn't sell while I'm in the green because I'm like, what, this is a great team. This could go blue chip, and it never did. So
Dude, I literally 3 or 4 days ago, the whole meme land thing happened, right? We had two potatoes, we had a meme list. They minted, those things were at close to 8 ETH. I knew, dude. I knew in my mind, I was like, I need to sell all of this and then I can buy back in and I'll be fine. But sure enough, I convinced myself that I wasn't gonna do that. And 8 ETH
yeah.
out
That's because
eight.
I was on vacation.
I mean, listen, they're still sitting at an insane amount of money, and our original investment was like an ETH. So I'm happy with that. But I could have paid for multiple more and sitting on more profits. But again, what you're saying, I'm just fucking
Yeah.
horrible at that. I get too much emotion wrapped up in this.
Well, it's
Yeah.
difficult. And I think what you said, CK, really is something that people need to hear. In fact, I'm going to ask you in here in a little bit just to almost reiterate some of these main points that you've learned so we can just clip that in its own little piece because it's really good stuff. Because your point to exit strategy is critical. Now, our buddy, that's our investment guy. He's been friends with Mike and I for basically almost as long as Mike and I have been friends. And it's interesting because in the investment world, when it comes to stocks, or I mean, he was a finance major. He says the exact same thing. And Mike, you've heard him say it.
Uh-huh.
Exit strategy. You've got to have a plan. When are you getting in? Make sure you do it. And then when are you getting out? Do it. It doesn't matter. You have to be as emotionless about it as you can. And it's hard. It's very difficult, right? This is the problem with poker players, right? Once you play enough poker, you know the hands, you know the strategies. There's only so many strategies, right? But the emotion behind it to keep your cool when the pressure's on the line and there's a huge pot and you're sitting there looking at two aces in your hand and you're going, you don't want to like give it away, or you're sitting there with a 2 and a 5 and you're bluffing and you don't want to give it away. It's very difficult to master that emotion when there's a lot of money involved. And I mean, to your friend that lost, I mean, potentially, essentially 680,000 potential dollars, right? Same thing, right? It's tough. I mean, imagine that going up, and I'm sitting here, I'm thinking me and Mike would be on the phone, we'd be screaming like crazy, we'd be talking about $700,000, and I know hands down, either me or him or both of us would be saying, "Bro, it's going to get to $1 million. Let's hold on to it." Right?
Yeah.
I'm right, Mikey,
A
right?
100%.
We're going to say we're going to be millionaires. It's getting to a million. Hold. And then you watch it go down, watch it go, and it's just like it's brutal. And so it's very difficult to do that. And I think that what you're saying when you talk about having an exit strategy. I think it's about not just having the strategy, but having the discipline to execute it and just emotionlessly. You have to just be like, this is what I'm getting out, done, and you just do it and live
Right.
with it.
Right.
And one of the only times we did that, Mike, was with Hape. And
Yes.
look at that was our like most profitable, day. I mean,
Yeah.
that was
But
insane.
also
And
look what
so,
happened. CK, have you heard our Hape story?
No, I haven't.
So we were very clear. And me being a Hape mod, this was a big deal, right? Because there was this stigma around me being a Hape mod. I definitely can't sell my Hapes, right? And so I got multiple for being a mod from day one. And the goal was, this is when we were first starting, like really getting into it, and we were gonna sell at like 8 was our bottom, right? If it was approaching 8, we're fucking out. And we did it. And I kept one as nostalgia because it was the first big, it was like my break, right? It was your heart's story, really. Like I became a mod, the network was an insane, we made a ton of money. But of course, one of the Hapes we sold was the Golden Hape that sold for 75 ETH. So
Wow.
the lottery
yeah.
ticket that you talk about actually happened to us, and
Oh
we
my
sold it
gosh.
because of our exit strategy.
Yeah. But still, man, I mean, it is what it is. The bottom line is we made a sound decision, and even then, it's still one of the most profitable calls. So,
Yeah,
so let me
100%.
ask you this, CK, just so because we're talking about it. What would you say to somebody who's saying, okay, I've been doing this for a while, or maybe I'm new to this? Just some bullet points that you've learned through going through this in terms of investment strategies. All of this, by the way, is for entertainment purposes only. Do your own research, but just some strategies that you have learned and found, like having a plan or having an exit strategy that you think would be just good bullet points to list.
Yeah, 100%. Number one thing, exit strategy. Before you enter anything, you should have a plan. I think number two thing is liquidity. If you don't sell in the green, you're probably going to end up holding to the red. I've done it on, $5,000 and $70,000 bags. It's just the reality. If you don't get out in the green, you're probably going to hold to the red. And yeah, I think those are probably the two main things I tell people. The last thing, definitely educate yourself. Actually learn. I think one of the biggest problems in the space, and we'll probably get to this later, is people can get an allow list and can make the same amount of money whether they know what the project's doing or not. And this is one of the biggest problems with my consultancy, and my entire business model is built off of me being able to educate a bigger audience about what they're doing, because it's so easy for people to not educate themselves, and it's so important for people to actually know, and it completely affects how you invest, and how what projects you're holding, what you're selling. And yeah.
Like it. I
I
like
like it.
it.
That's awesome. Thank you so much.
Maddie, any more questions?
So no, I want to move it forward into, uh, you at this point you're starting to, because you were talking about the creator side, making shoes not scalable. You see people starting these projects making 180 ETH in 20 seconds. What do you do from there?
So yeah, I started alpha calling in the Heart project. I would say that was kind of my first real Web3 creator experience, unless you'd consider the shoes, but that's kind of a Web2 business in Web3. But yeah, I started alpha calling. I wasn't paid or anything. I was just trying to do something cool for the community. I think the community was super down. This was right after we dropped from 2 ETH down to like 0.25. So people are like, okay, what's going on? Maybe I should have sold. The community's cool, but was it worth 4 grand?
Right.
And
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, so I really just wanted to contribute. I really thought I had a lot of value to bring to the team. I was a college student. I had time. I wanted to do cool stuff in the community. I wanted to be the community manager. And so I started trying out some things. The first thing was definitely alpha calling. Primarily for me, it was education. I think education is such an incredibly important thing, and I'm sure that'll show more as we get further into this. But yeah, I centered my entire alpha calling strategy around education and information rather than entry exit price. because again, I was a terrible trader. I still did some of that, but that's kind of where I focused myself, was like more so on the news and education side of things. And I was really lucky, one of the members of the Hard community happened to be part of the now probably nothing team. He was part of Jeremy Fall's core team, and he just reached out to me. He was like, you know what, I love the way you see projects, I love the way you carry yourself, I'd love to have a conversation and tell you about something I'm building. So I hopped on a call with him and Jeremy Fall. Absolutely no idea who these people were. I got so lucky. You talk about like luck. Like this was, this is like a God moment for me. Like
Mhm.
because I mean, I had no experience. I had, for the most part, not much of a reason to be in the room. And they were telling me about their project. I was like, you know what, this is really cool. And, having the experience as an alpha caller, I kind of laid out some things where I was like, you know what, I think if you do these things differently, I mean, just in my experience, seeing what differentiates good from bad projects and successful projects from failed projects, I think these are things that are really going to have an influence on your launch and your long term. And through that, they decided to bring me on as somewhat of a marketing advisor, and I kind of just helped them across the board, as well as doing the community management. So that was my real entry and my first experience doing anything in the advising sphere, and that's kind of what grew into my now today consultancy.
I love it. And so I'm interested in that. Let's just go through that moment to your consultancy, because I have a couple questions, but I don't think it's right at this moment in time.
Yeah, yeah, no worries. So continuing, had the conversation with Jeremy, jumped on the probably nothing team, and my whole thought process, I always talk about like planning, valuing your future self, preparing, actually having a plan. My plan joining the space and really actually being able to contribute to it in a meaningful way was to do things the right way rather than the way things have been done. That's a really core foundational principle in everything I do, is doing things the best way they can be done rather than the way they're traditionally done. And this was kind of in the height of like the Twitter giveaway meta, or going and
Yeah.
botting your followers, and all of that stuff like just left a sour taste in my mouth. I think it's bad for the space. I thought it was, part of the reason, we deserved the bear market. And at the time we were kind of just going into the bear market. It was like right at the end of the bull. And I was like, this is unsustainable. You have projects, you go look, you scroll up on your Twitter feed, you'll find projects that like from their first post to last post, all they'll post are Twitter giveaways, no content, absolutely nothing about the project or the team. And they're minting at point one, raising $1 million, and I mean slowly rugging the project. And that story played over a million times. And it just hurt me to watch, because I'm like, this, from day one I held on to this vision of what the technology could be. And I'm watching so many people just follow the same formula, which it worked. I understand why people did it. I vaguely understood why it worked, but it just hurt me to watch because I knew it was so unhealthy for the space. And so launching probably nothing, I kind of went a different strategy. Again, this was when kind of the inorganic meta was going on. I went fully organic. I would say I actually went too organic. Looking back at my launch strategy, I was like, oh my gosh, I had no idea what I was doing. So I got in, kind of did the whole collab cycle, a lot of the traditional stuff. Got really blessed to start building my network through that. And I started building a name for myself as kind of a collab manager in the space, primarily through the Probably Nothing ecosystem, working with Jeremy Fall. As to date, we've actually launched quite a few projects. We launched Probably Nothing, Photosynthesis, Golden Egg Club, Probably a Label, and Stickman Toys. Do you have any questions before I continue?
No, go for it. Keep on rolling.
Awesome. Awesome. So that kind of segues. I would say the next, I mean, real cornerstone in my journey was working with Stickman Toys. If you don't know anything about them, that was really my first big project, and this is kind of where I started to learn like, oh my gosh, Jeremy Fall's a huge guy. It was with Warner Records, and this was before a lot. I would say the vast majority of the brands in the space hadn't entered. Warner Records was closer to the front end of that. So I spoke.
Yeah.
Yeah, he brought me on. I was advising and collab managing for that, and it was a surreal experience because I was launching a free mint from Warner Records, kind of doing it in my own way. And like,
Yeah.
I think one of the coolest things about being a collab manager and managing in that way is you have your finger over the pulse of the supply. Like you think about who's most important and most valuable in the project. Like in a large sense, it's the collab manager, because for reference, Stickman Toys minted out free mint at point 0.2. So every single allow list I gave out was point 0.2 ETH, and I gave out 10. I think I gave out 6,000 of them. So like I mean, I for the most part managed this incredible amount of capital that was going out, and it gave me so much value to the people I was talking to, and it was so valuable to me. So through that, I met NFT Boy. You might know him. He has a great presence in the space.
Uh-huh.
Again, at the time, I didn't really know what I was doing, and I met him, and I was really blessed. This was such a valuable mint that he actually kind of helped me with my collab process, even though he wasn't on payroll, wasn't any of that, because the allow list alone were so valuable for him
Yeah.
to essentially be able to give to his network. So he went, and pretty much in an evening he dropped me in, I think, 60 plus group chats with 60 of the more influential people in the space to essentially help me distribute this allow list to his network and contribute value mutually. And that was, I would say, that's definitely one of the cornerstone moments in me getting to where I am now, because at the time I didn't understand the value of a network. I didn't realize
Mhm.
how vast the space was. I didn't realize how interconnected it was, and that was really my big entry into the space was Stickman Toys, participating on that drop, meeting NFT Boy, and actually starting to build a network, meet people, and have something of value, and understand how valuable I am and how valuable of a cog in the system of launching a project that the collab managing and advising role is. And that's, yeah, that was a really big moment for me.
Yeah, and that's so again, there's in essence, NFT boy is a mentor to you because he has this established network and he introduces you to this. What impressed me when I was talking to you is you even were so transparent to kind of open up your method to your madness, and just you're so particular and diligent about tracking all of these comms and the people that you know. Did that come right away or was that built over time? Like, how does your method evolve from, throughout this process? I'm interested to hear what tools you started to use, kind of what tips and tricks that you started picking up. Obviously, don't share all the secrets to your trade if you don't feel like it, or share them all if you're cool with that.
Yeah, no, of course. I would say the biggest thing and one of the most valuable things I've learned doing what I do is the value of organization and workflow. Workflow was such a big thing for me, and it wasn't that way at first. I would say this was more so as I grew my consultancy. I started to put a lot of intentional thought into the way that I was handling these conversations and the way I could optimize it. Because for reference, I would say the majority of projects, I guess maybe not now because there's a lot of people who do what I did, but for a long time, most projects would need 3 to 4 collab managers to manage an allow list because it was just so much work. You think about the actual
Yeah.
communication, we're having back and forth communication, negotiation, closing, running giveaways, communicating winners, uploading wallets to contract, all of that work. With 100, 200, 300 groups, it was an incredible amount of work. And a lot of, as I was speaking to earlier, such a big portion of or such a big thing that I put thought to is the scalability of the business, and I got to this moment and I'm like, okay, this is a great business. I completely see where this could go. I understand how this could be big, but I don't know if this is scalable yet. And so I put a ton of thought, and this is, over months and months of time, but and put tons of thought into, how can I make this scalable? How can I make this efficient? How can I cut steps out of the workflow? And that's really what kind of developed my entire process. And if you actually go compare my process, my sheets, my organization, the way I segment my business with my team, like I would say I'm one of the more organized, if not the most organized in the space. And it's such a valuable thing. I would say, especially working with Web2 IP, it's so important to be able to take, these really abstract ideas such as a collab and a giveaway and put it into really relatable terms such as, a very well organized spreadsheet where a team can go look at and exactly understand where we are in the process. Because it's not just important from my side and keeping me organized and efficient, but it's
Mhm.
important to cater to the client and actually make their user experience and participating with me as a consultant, actually making their understanding of what I'm doing and their experience just as good as mine, if
Right.
that makes sense. And
Right.
that was a huge part of my thought process that actually went into, how do I manage this workflow? How can I cut steps out? And the biggest thing I found, the most important thing in collab managing is cutting as much communication out as possible. So I've kind of developed this whole system, and the way I communicate with people to minimize the conversation. I think I literally have some people I can close a collab in 3 messages. I send them the project, they approve it, I send them allocation and giveaway, and we're done. When I first started, it was 40 to 50 messages back and forth on each, because we're
Yeah.
negotiating, we're talking back and forth, I'm getting to know them, and it's great, but it's not scalable. And that's kind of where I started to differentiate myself and actually build this into its own thing, because up till now it was completely built off of, Jeremy Fall's brand, and it was so valuable for me to be able to get into the space that way. But it really limited me, because I was constantly kind of in his shadow. And
Right.
so a lot
Yeah.
of where my where my where my consultancy really started was participating in the Phoenix's launch. And I'll give you a minute to say anything before I pivot there.
No,
Yeah.
I have other questions that are related, but I wanna keep on moving forward
Yeah.
because I think they'll
But I do.
it's not time relevant is what I'm trying to get at. Go ahead, Manny.
Sure. One real quick thing though is you talked about the of workflow and organization. What tools have you found were very effective for helping you gain that optimization for workflow and for organization? Because everybody's got their thing. I'm just curious, what did you find resonated with you, helped you get that focus and organization?
I mean, Excel, I would say the biggest thing is intentional thought. It's taking the time to actually look at my work process and identify the inefficiencies. I identify even weird inefficiencies. Like one really big one, actually, whenever you're collab managing, is finding chats. You go in my Discord, I'm in two or three, 400 different group chats managing collabs or talking about partnerships, or it could be anything under the sun. So
Yeah.
a huge part of actually being an effective collab manager is making sure you can find your chats. So finding good ways to organize them. So like one example of that, one of the things I do to optimize my workflow is I have this spreadsheet, and every person has this, every person who does collabs, and I would say a lot of connected people in the space have it. But having a spreadsheet where you kind of centralize everything, specifically in the collab sense, I centralize all of the collaborated things on that sheet, and specifically to optimize this one workflow problem and finding chats. I have a column in each spreadsheet for each collab that I'm doing, that includes like the name of the chat. And with the name of the chat, I always structure it the name of the project that I'm launching. So for example, Phoenix's X, the projects I'm collabing with. So if I ever need to find a project, I don't have to scroll. I don't have to go DM people to find it. I just type in the project I'm working on. So Phoenix's X, if I want to find Probably Nothing's collab, I just type in PN and it's there. And it's just optimizing all of those, I mean, really small details across the board is really what has allowed me to scale my business the way it has. And for reference, again, at the time, most people have teams of 3 to 4 people managing collabs at a time. I had a team of 2, me and one of my buddies. We run all of the collabs. At my peak, actually, yeah, at my peak, I was managing 5 allow lists at a time. And I mean, it was incredible to see, because I'm doing all of this, and I'm still able to continue to scale. I had 5 projects on board instead of 6, because I hadn't found a sixth good project, not because I didn't have the bandwidth for a sixth project. And that was really what made it so powerful. And that's really where I started building my brand. And that's probably the next most valuable thing I have, and the next most valuable asset I have is the brand behind me. I've built an incredible brand identity, because from day one I was working on banger projects. And that was, again, God's grace. You look at Jeremy Fall finding me. This is a very well known, or this is a well known and very well connected celebrity from LA finding an alpha caller in a really small project. Like, the odds of that are incalculable.
Right.
That was such
Yeah.
Right.
an influential part of me actually getting into this side of the space. And yeah, I kind of lost my train of thought, but that's
No,
No,
yeah.
no,
it's
you were just talking about your journey and going on to the next part. But I think, but because you were mentioning Phoenix, but before we get there, I think this is a good place to ask this question. Um, with being so efficient and uh Is it your knowledge over time? Because when you're managing this many logistics and relationships, it's impossible not to always 100% of these people can't be good and with good intentions, right? So what is your learning curve around figuring out who to interact with, who not to interact with? Is it just a case of I got burned by this person, they're connected to another bad player? I'm really interested in how you evolve this, because, like you said, you're a man of faith. You want to do the right thing, and there's a lot of bad actors. How do you navigate that at such a high pace? Because that seems like almost an insurmountable task.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. So I mean, it's definitely a hard thing. I think there's always steps you can put in place. The Web3 space is not a quiet space. You look at FUD. People will literally go from like the biggest influencer to a nobody in a day. Like that's such a common thing. I would say, primarily, I mean, it's a hard thing to do. I'm a very trusting person too. I would say I'm definitely too trusting. I mean, I have advisory calls with people. I mean, from the sense of people advising me from like a mentorship standpoint. I think one of the biggest pieces of advice I've gotten is, you know, pay attention to who you work with. Put in the right boundaries, because I mean, I would say the majority of successful people I know get screwed over by a business partner somewhere in their career, because whenever there's $1 million on the line, like it's very different. You can't just have, I mean, you can, but you
Yeah.
probably shouldn't just be relying on a relationship there, and that might work, but it might not work. And like that would suck so bad to get to that point and to scale this business and put so much time and emotion into it, and then just have it taken away because you don't put in the right steps to protect yourself in that way. So
Yeah.
that's kind of from the business perspective. I would say being proactive is the biggest thing. First of all, of course, if I want to work with someone, vet them. Have a conversation with them, understand who they are. Have conversations like this. It's not just. I
Yeah.
mean, it's not just a transactional thing. I would say you look at the people I work with. I don't really try to work with the biggest people. We'll get into this later. One of the guys I work with, for example, like, or even Chowman, he's kind of my partner in my consultancy. He manages the half of the business that I don't run, and like with him, it's completely a relational thing. He's not a big person. He lives internationally. He didn't have a big following. He was just someone I met in the Heart Project community. And I was like, you know what? I think this guy would be a great guy to work with. Let's try it. And we tried it, and he's completely changed my model. And a lot of that was built on the relationship of it, rather than just working with the biggest person or the person who has the most experience. Because that kind of comes back to the idea of doing things the right way. And not necessarily having everything be transactional, which I think is so easy to do with anything business or money related.
Right. Any other specific guardrails you've found yourself putting in place to try to minimize just dealing with the bad actors? Because there are, and the bad actors in my mind come from, and maybe you have an opinion about this, it's just there's so much money to be made in this space, and that's why all this crazy shit happens so often and so quick. Guardrails and reaction to just that comment.
So I would ask, in which aspect, because there's so many ways that I can be affected by these bad actors. It's hard to kind of express
Ooh,
guardrails, because it could be an influencer that I host on my show,
right.
utilizing my community. It could be someone I do a collab with. It could be a client. There's just so many different angles that those can come at
Mhm.
me, if that
Well,
makes
let's
sense.
start there, man. Give us the angles that you think about or are exposed to when you have to, are constantly thinking about, is this the right move? I'd love to hear your thoughts around that, because obviously we have our own thoughts, but interested in
Yeah.
your perspective.
Yeah, for sure. Biggest angle is always going to be business partners. I would say the biggest things there, first of all, adequate vetting and infrastructure on the front end, setting up the right contracts to make sure I'm not the one getting in trouble, actually having the conversations, understanding who the person is, and I mean, actually making sure we resonate with each other, and hearing, the passion in their voice. That's a huge thing from day one for me. Heart Project Creature World. That's why I bought those. That's the same with how I buy into people. When I hear people convicted about what they're doing or about something that we want to do together, that is such an incredibly important thing to do, because I don't like working fully on a transactional basis. I want people to be as invested in something as I am from an emotional standpoint, because that's so important if you want to be successful together. And I mean, I will be completely transparent. I think this is definitely one of the areas that I lack. I think this is one of the things I need to put more thought into, is how to protect myself, because there is, I mean, we live in like a cancel culture. I work with the wrong
Yeah.
person. I could really, really affect
Right.
myself.
Right.
So no, I do completely understand that. I think that's definitely the first angle. Other sides. Hosting someone on my show, giving the voice to the wrong person. I think that's something that definitely scares me. From the aspect of, this is my community. These are people who come to listen to me on, 2 or 3 times a week. They're putting in time to invest in me as much as I am in them, and I want to give them the best content I can. And I'm sure that's something you resonate with.
Oh,
It's not,
absolutely.
you really want to give the voice to the right people,
Yeah.
because whenever you give the voice to the wrong person, it's the people that are supporting you that really feel the
Right.
pain out of it.
Right.
Just,
Yeah.
I mean, even more so than even you at times.
Yeah.
And so that's
Mhm.
such an important thing. With that, I would say, again, proper vetting, proper conversations, and guardrails. This is something, actually, I'm not going to talk about that, and I was going to talk about my media brand, but I don't want to reveal too much yet. But
Yeah. No, I get it.
yeah, I think those are definitely the places I think I'm most exposed. I mean, there's definitely other places like I could do. For example, someone actually hit me up. I'm doing collabs right now for Utopia Avatars, and I got a DM from someone saying, "Hey man, you have someone on your friend list who's impersonating someone on our team." And I was like, "Oh my gosh, I didn't even know this." And like, I hadn't given him spots, but like there's not really a good way to vet that. There
Yeah.
obviously
Right.
is. You have friends in common, you can go check their Twitter, but at the end of the day, there's only so much you can do. And that sort of thing, I will say, like, whenever things like that happen, I see it often as, this is them. Not really. I would say it's them stealing financial gain. It's them just making themselves money. I don't see it as necessarily hurting anyone in general. It might have an effect on floor price. If I could, for example, they were impersonating a community. They were like, "Hey, can we get 10 spots for our community?" Like, yeah, they're probably just going to take the spots and mint them all themselves. But at the end of the day, that's not stealing someone else's money in a sense. I
Right.
think it's a very different dynamic. So I think, as far as the places where I cover myself, my immediate thoughts always going to go to the places where I have people supporting me, or the people that directly affect my business, specifically from like the public stance. The people who I'm building with.
Right. Right. And so, Maddie, real quick time check. I still have my quick 8 o'clock. Got to hop away for 5 minutes. How do we want to navigate this situation? Are you cool when I hop away, or do we want to try to
Yeah.
wind her down? Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Because I think we still have a good chunk to
Yeah. We got
talk about.
a lot to
So
talk about.
take us take us now from where we are to, you were starting to talk about Phoenix and kind of like the next iteration of your consultant business. And then, I have some other questions that will pop up, and I have some, but we'll ask them as you keep on going.
Yeah, for sure. So the Phoenixes was a huge step for me, because this was my first project without Jeremy Fall. Because a lot of it was kind of built off of Jeremy Fall's reputation. He's a big guy in the space. He carries weight, so it's not that hard to sell his products. And coming to the Phoenixes, is a completely different thing. And for context, the Phoenixes are a Web3 pivot of a Web2 company called Habit Nest. They specialize in wellness. They publish like journals. They have like a podcast. They have a lot of different media content around wellness, which is, I mean, really valuable. They do a very good job in Web3 or in Web2. I think they sold like over 1 million journals, so they were very successful. But Web3 is a completely different game, and I was the person they chose to work with on a marketing standpoint. And at the time, I would say, up until somewhat recently, I kind of acted as an individual, meaning you hire me, you don't hire my agency. Whereas I've kind of pivoted away for reasons. But yeah, I worked with the Phoenixes, and I mean, it was a hard launch. I think this was probably one of the biggest tests I've had, and one of the biggest successes I've had, because it was not a hype project. This was a project we built from the dirt. This was a project that I built the right way over the way everyone else was doing it. I did it Yeah, I mean that's really what it came down to. I
Tell
did
us about that. I'm interested. Right way versus the way everybody else was doing that. What does that mean?
organic, transparent, leading with value. You know, you go look at the Phoenix's Twitter, every tweet was value delivering. You know, whenever I advise people on managing Twitter, and this is the way I carry my personal brand, everything across the board, you know, I think anytime someone comes to anything that I put out, anytime someone reads a tweet, anytime someone joins a space, I need them to leave with more value than they came with. And that's the only way you're going to get people to keep coming back. And I don't think giveaways do that at all in an effective way. You know, that's a 1 in 1,000 chance. You know, like you're not actually giving value to anyone. And so such an important part of, you know, the way I would manage social media, the way I would manage communication with other communities was about driving the value that we're actually contributing. So for them, that was pushing their ethos of, you know, being the biggest wellness brand in Web3 and actually providing the resources for people in Web3 to manage themselves and keep themselves well and build healthy habits. Because I think Web3, more than most industries, or really the majority of industries, really needs that. You know, I'm on a
Right.
screen for 10 hours a day. Like it's so
Yeah.
hard to stay healthy and stay well emotionally and physically. And they were really bridging that gap in a good way. So with them, yeah, I mean it was a huge test because it wasn't something that was easy to sell. You know, probably nothing was a free mint. Stickman Toys was a free mint. Phoenix's was a paid mint. They minted at, I actually ended up advising them down to 0.05. Ended up being a huge success. For reference, you know, everyone gauges social interaction as a huge and important metric. You know, they didn't have much of that. You know, they were getting 150 likes a post going into launch. We went and hosted a launch space with some of our partners, and 3,000 people joined. Completely insane. You know, I think it kind of just took the space by storm, and the launch went crazy. We minted out at about point 0.2, and this was, again, I think this was right before probably the worst of the bear market. So nothing was really doing well at the time. Again, minted out around point 0.2, did incredibly well. It's actually to date on par for my most successful launch, and this was a project that really had very little going for it, you know. And yeah, I mean, it really, I think for me, it taught me a few huge lessons. You know, first of all, my method, doing it the right way over the way other people are doing it, works, you know, for a few reasons. You know, first of all, and this is another thing that I hold very high in the way I carry myself, but meaningful differentiation, you know, doing things differently. I mean, not only for the sake of doing them better, but even just being different in and of itself is a reason people come. You go look at Valhalla, you go look at Ether, Meme Land, all of the projects that are most successful are projects that aren't part of that 99%. You know, they
Right.
try to go do something a different way, and it's a big portion of what actually makes them successful. And
Right.
Sure.
that's what I did with the Phoenixes, and that's what made the Phoenixes so successful. And
Right.
that's something I really look to bring across the board in my business. And if you actually, I mean, understanding a little bit deeper in my consultancy, a big reason I call myself a launch advisor, and why that actually, or what that actually means, is that means I come and partner with brands and do what needs to get done for them to be as successful as possible. You know, I don't think there's a good role to describe what I do, because in some projects, you know, that could be managing Twitter. You know, in other projects, that's going to be doing marketing, or I mean, even internal stuff. You know, it completely varies because every project needs something else. And I think it's so common in the space. I would say the vast majority of people who run any sort of consultancy or sell a service, the vast majority of them, specifically in the collab front, you know, they just offer collabs. You know, they offer one package for every project, and that's not what projects need. That's not how projects become successful. If you go look at almost every agency, I would say almost all of them have terrible sellout rates and have, I mean, really bad sellout rates. They might be able to get numbers, they might be able to get an audience, but things never go as planned because, you know, it really comes down to that differentiation. And whenever you have
Mhm.
one person taking a template and applying it to every project they get hired on, it doesn't work.
Right.
It doesn't,
Right.
and that's, I mean, that's the nature of it.
I love that.
That's a
And that's a
I love
great
that.
way to tie it together. And that's what we're doing, right? We're doing it the right way.
Yeah.
I can't tell you how many times I get frustrated of people saying, love what you're doing, but you only have X amount of followers, so can't spend the time. And I'm like, well, that's going to be your loss in the long run.
Yeah, man.
And
Well,
I'm fine with that.
and it's a very like vacuous way to judge the legitimacy of anything, you know? Because once you peek behind the curtain and see Oz and see what having followers actually is, I can't tell you the number of people I knew that just made a business decision to pay 10 grand. They just started with a budget of $10,000 and got themselves 50 to 100,000 followers with it and have now monetized it to a point to make well more than that. And it's like, you can just run a business that way if you want, but it's not real. It's there's it's just there's no substance to it. But that's a whole different topic. I like how you're breaking it down. Um, I will ask one question though, because I want to fine tune this. I've read a lot of books, business books, leadership books, and a buzzword you always hear is you said all social media should add value to those who view it. But value is an easy word to say, but hard to articulate, right? When you say you want to add value to a social media post, of course the obvious things about what you were talking about, a project and talking about their ethos and their mission statements, of course. But you can't just do a bunch of posts about that. So when you say add value, the reason I'm saying this is because I think a lot of people think it needs to be something ultra serious and planned and formatted. But sometimes, like Mike, one of the things Mike's does that I think is fantastic is just some humor, some entertainment. It's nice to be able to like go to something you enjoy and see something that makes you smile or maybe makes you feel better. And so I'm curious your take. When you say add value, what do you mean by that?
So yeah, I mean you're completely right. It's it's hard to articulate. I don't have a super defined answer for this. I would
Yep.
say it completely varies project to project. I think what value is why you should be part of the community, specifically in a Web3 sense, because I mean, that's really what you're trying to portray. I don't think value is something that should relate to everyone. I don't think it's what people want to hear, but I think it's what a specific community and the people you want in your community, I think it's what they need to hear. You go look at Phoenix's, why it was a successful launch. It wasn't successful because because everyone loves wellness. Everyone doesn't love wellness. I don't meditate. I'm not great at wellness. It's because we did a great job from the communication standpoint of
Yeah.
appealing to the crowd that we want to be part of our community. And it's an insanely powerful thing whenever you get a large community of people who are holding an NFT, not because they're trying to sell it for more. You go look at Art Gobblers, that was a great example, or any project that appeals to a Web2 audience. The most successful projects are the projects that get their NFTs in the hands of people who, I mean, aren't there to flip it. It's pretty logical, but
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of a weird way to define value, but yeah, that's kind of
No, it is.
how I would.
And defining it that way creates value because people hold that and inherently increases the value of the NFT, which is the funny part about it. Now you have to have some volume as well to be successful, right? Um, but what you're saying is absolutely right, and I think I'm thinking this might be your answer, as similar. But I'm very interested when you said, "Hey, for Phoenixes, we had an average of about 150 interactions or views per post, but then we had 3,000 people show up to a Twitter Spaces. What happened there? Can you explain that to us?"
Yes, meaningful differentiation. I talk a lot about how this is what makes launches successful. The way we meaningfully differentiated ourselves is we built a B2B service. We built a wellness service where we can partner with communities and come in and actually build wellness activations with them and create competitions between communities. And this is what, I mean, created that insane response. We, again, not much interaction into launch day. We did a launch space with, I think, like 40 to 60 communities, including like a lot of the bigger ones in the space. I think I'm trying to even remember. We had a lot of really big communities on there, and I mean, just the nature of influential people in the same room, like it compounds, it's exponential, and it was so powerful on our launch day, and it made us so successful. I believe that's a huge reason why, is because of that Twitter space. I don't think we would have been as successful without it. I think actually one of the things that made us so powerful, and this is, I would say, a core problem with the space, but hype, because one thing that made the Phoenixes so powerful is not that many people knew about it. They didn't have that much interaction, and they jumped on a space with 3,000 people on launch day. that's like a really big momentum driving moment, because we went from 0 to 100 effectively in no time,
Right.
dropped an NFT, and everyone freaked out. A lot of people not knowing what it was, which I think is a problem. But I mean, and at the end of the day, it's a big thing that drove the insane success we had.
And you think that that space really wasn't planned. You just knew the idea was gonna work out probably pretty well because you had so many collaborations with different communities, right? Or am I missing
Yes,
something there?
yeah, the reason it's so powerful is because it's what meaningfully differentiated ourselves. You know,
Right.
you go look at every project launching at the time, the launch template is you do Twitter giveaways, you do collabs, you go do 20 AMAs, you drop an NFT. And we went and did an AMA with, 60 projects at one time that don't do AMAs in and of themselves. You go look at the projects we're collaborating with. One of the things that made wellness such a powerful driving factor for us is we're able to reach a different grouping and a different community in the space, because you have, the very monetary driven projects. You go look at most of the projects hosting AMAs right now, they're all alpha servers, they're all monetarily driven communities. Of course they're going to host spaces. You go look at the wellness driven spaces, none of them host AMAs. You go look at, I mean, I would say the majority of real communities, I shouldn't say the majority, a lot of, if not the majority of the non financially driven communities, which is the demographic we need to reach, those people do not really host spaces, at
Right.
least not collaboration spaces like this. So it was so powerful seeing, 40 communities that never host AMAs with other projects come and join and be one of 40 in our space, and then bringing along their community. And, the day before our launch, having 60 communities announce, hey guys, Phoenixes are launching today. Don't miss it if you have an allow list. Like, that's such a powerful thing, because these aren't going in collab channels. These aren't going in giveaway channels. These are going in announcements. These are
Yeah.
reaching the
Yeah.
people who aren't there for the monetary gain. The people who flip NFTs, the reason projects dump after 2 weeks is because the only people they promote to are the investors. Of course they're going to flip. It's the
Right.
only way they make money. The only people who are still here are the people who are making money, who are flipping NFTs immediately. Of course, you can't give your entire allocation, your entire allowance to them. And this is where so many projects, I would say 98% of projects, miss it or don't know how to navigate it, is allocating their allowance to the people who really relate and connect to the projects. And if you actually go look at the projects that are most successful right now, I think great example, I would say Valhalla, kind of bringing in a bit of the application meta. They were
Yeah.
really able to curate a community and pick people who might be convicted or might really be interested in being part of the community. Or
Right.
even like ETH gobblers, if you, not ETH gobblers, art gobblers, if you don't know how they curated, they went and did calls with pretty much everyone on their allow list. I was actually blessed to be a part of it. And it was like so hard to get an allow list. They gave an allow list spot to only pretty much exclusively artists. I was one of the few people who I think who wasn't an artist who got on their allow list, because I'm really good friends with one of their advisors. And I mean, that's the nature of it. You go observe successful launches. The thing across the board in long-term successful projects is that, reaching your consumer with your product, your ideal consumer, your product market fit, not just the template person who's entering every giveaway in the channel, because those people, they're not learning in what you're doing, they're not interested. And whenever you can do that, whenever you can reach that product market fit, whenever you can reach the individuals who are really interested in your product, everyone else starts to FOMO. You saw art gobblers the night before. I was getting DMs. People were buying Alalis for 5 ETH. And I was like, this is insane. There's no way this is going to be 5 ETH. This is a free mint. And then I went and minted. This is actually a funny story. I minted it at the rock climbing gym. I was in the corner of the gym on my laptop, and I minted a 12 ETH NFT and flipped it. And it was just a surreal moment, because I'm sitting in the corner of a gym. Everyone's just lifting weights, and I and I minted something for free and flipped it for 12 ETH. And it taught me such the valuable lesson about, this idea of reaching your ideal consumer and actually making sure anyone who gets your allow list and gets to be a part of the community is someone who's interested and someone who wants to be a part. And just for reference, great example of project that's doing this incredible right now, AI Arena. They're also a paradigm backed project. If you don't know anything about them, they're going to be incredibly successful
I've heard of
because they're
them.
doing that so well.
Yeah. Yeah. So, Matt, you take it from fantastic conversation, CK, doing an awesome job, and I really appreciate all the transparency. I got to hop away for a handful of minutes. I think maybe move it forward, Maddie, and I'll be
Yeah,
back. I still have a couple questions.
sounds good. So yeah, so let's move forward in time now. So at this point, you're advising, you have some pretty notable things under your belt. You've now branched off, you've done some stuff on your own and not under kind of the umbrella of the larger entity there. Where do we go from there?
Yeah, so this is really where my consultancy starts to build out. I start to have conversations with more and more people. A lot of people notice the Phoenix's Mint. That was a really powerful thing for me and a great leveraging point. And I started having, I think my next project, I actually had a conversation with who was it? It was Cryptoria. I had a conversation with, I believe it's Will and Tom, the two founders. It might not be Tom. I know it's Will. Will and someone else. Yeah, Will and Thomas.
It's
I had a
Will and Tom,
conversation with,
yeah, and then
yeah.
Irritated is there helping out, but yeah, Will and Tom are the founders.
Yeah, yeah. So I hopped on a call with them, and they were kind of telling me about what they were looking to do, and I mean, it was really cool for me because this was
Yeah.
another one of those moments where I really heard the passion of the founders' voices.
Yep.
They really loved their product, and I know you guys. I mean, you've interviewed them. I'm sure you've seen this. I heard
Yeah.
it in their voice,
Amazing.
and
Amazing people.
yeah, they really loved what they were doing. And for me, coming from like some of the projects I've worked on, I was like, I don't know about this. I don't know if this is something that's going to sell, but they're so sold on their project. This is something that they want to be successful, and they want to be successful so bad that I know they're going to be successful. And so it's something I decided to work on. And again, another, I would call it an incredible success. I think as far as Postman projects, if you go compare every single project I've worked on, I think Cryptoria has the most consistent volume. And I'm just talking from a sales point. If you go look at their sales, I think they have
Yeah.
40 to 50 sales a day. And that's mind blowing. Go compare that to any project in the space. I think they're probably one of the most consistent, if not the most consistent, because they've done such an incredible job of building conviction within the community and finding the right people. And I mean, really portraying vision and having people want to be a part of the community. And so that's one of the things I loved so much about
Yeah.
working with the Cryptoria team and having that really successful launch.
That's awesome. Okay. And so you're working there. You started you talked with the founders of Cryptoria. Let's keep it going.
Yeah, yeah. So again, I mean, we kind of followed similar things to what I was doing with some of my other projects, of course, tweaks because they're a different project, different needs. But
Yeah.
another, again, great launch, really successful. Yeah, yeah, really successful. I think we minted out and our floor is around zero point 0.1. So another really successful one. And this is really where I started to understand and realize the potential of, like, this could be something.
Yeah.
I'm having successful launches when nobody else is. I'm doing things differently and it's working. And so this was really where I started to build out my consultancy. And yeah, and actually kind of formalize it. So it's no longer just kind of this abstract idea and me hopping on
Yeah.
payroll for a few months with projects. It's people hiring me and me building a team and me really working alongside them to make them successful.
Sure. I mean, it's real applied knowledge. I mean, think about it. Anybody can say I'll consult during a bull run because everything was working, right? The real measure of metal, so to speak, here is, you were able to do something that was finding success, as you just said, in an arena where most people were not having success. And just that alone on your resume and track record is going to draw a lot of eyeballs, right? People are going to say, okay, what are you doing? And then that really sets you up to monetize and build a consulting business around it. So it sounds like that's what you were doing. What were some of your major kind of thoughts surrounding, okay, I've been poking at this and doing very well, but now I think this, like you said, this could be a thing. Where did you go? What did you start with first to start making it a realistic, kind of venture for you?
Yeah, yeah. One thing I wanna back up a little bit and just share like one of the insights I found that I think is so powerful. I think it's one of the biggest things I've learned, and I think one of the coolest experiences I've had. But just learning the value of me being young. I think for me, And for a lot of the people I work with, it's kind of weird hopping on a call with, for example, with Warner Records. I worked with Seb Simone. He's VP at Warner Records UK. I'm hopping on a call and telling him
Yeah.
what to do. And that was, I mean, it's just this surreal thing for me because I have
Yeah.
these people who are so incredibly successful who devote 40 years to mastery and succeed. And now they're sitting here listening to what I have to say, and it showed me. And I think one of the most valuable things about being young, especially in an industry like this, is I don't come with the presumptions that a lot of people do.
Yeah.
I don't have an understanding of what marketing should look like, so I don't have limits. You go look at the way I market. Sometimes,
Yeah.
like, my marketing's weird. I have different tactics. I put thought into it. I don't go by, like, obviously I'm not buying like Facebook ads or anything because that's not how Web3 works. But I don't have an understanding of how things should work. So I take these abstract principles that apply to marketing as a whole, and I'm able to actually conform them to the way marketing happens in Web3 and to innovate in that way. Because again, I don't understand how marketing should look. So I'm able
Yeah.
to make it look however I want.
No, I love that, man. I love it. I'm sure you've seen it's been buzzing around in social media, kind of trending a little bit, but the video of the fleas in the jar, you know what I'm talking about?
I actually
Uh,
don't.
yeah, it's a video. Basically, a guy it describes how if you put a bunch of fleas in a jar, they can jump like fleas can jump like crazy, like multiple feet. But if you put them in a jar that's only essentially 3 inches tall, 4 inches tall in a jar like that, what'll happen is they'll keep jumping and smashing against the lid at the top. And within 24 hours, all of them are jumping, but none of them are hitting the ceiling anymore.
Mm.
And what's wild is that if you open up the jar, they won't jump out anymore after that point. They know not to jump beyond that limit. And then what was crazy after that is any new fleas born there will also never jump higher than the other fleas they see jumping. And so to your point, you go to school and you get a marketing degree, and really what you've done is you put yourself in a jar, right? And so you're saying you're approaching it by not ever having been in the jar, you were able to jump differently than those around you because you didn't know there was a ceiling. And I think that that's kind of cool.
Yeah, no, that's a fantastic analogy. I mean, that's exactly what it was for me. I think that's one of the most valuable things I've learned. And I think that's where I can derive a lot of my confidence from. I can hop on calls with these people knowing that, I mean, I have something that they don't. They can't,
Yeah,
I mean, they really can't problem solve the way I can. They obviously have value to bring because,
yeah,
they may understand things that I don't about marketing, but I also have things that they don't understand. They can't
100%.
essentially, I mean they can't formulate the way I can because I don't think the way they do.
Yeah, and I mean, it's funny. So this is a great just little side topic while Mike's gone, but you know, what you're talking about here, this is something that plagues all businesses, and not just businesses. I mean, you could really use this for anything. In fact, if you really want to get into it, you could talk about the church itself. If you don't get new young members, you're doomed. And if you're in a business, I don't care how if you could be Google. The thing is that yes, you were young and hip at one point in time, but if you take 20, 30 years and now all of these people who are these like stodgy, 50, 60-year-old VPs, upper management, things like that, if you can't get those young 19, 20, 21 year olds and get them in there and innovating and thinking new, you're toast. You have to be able to adapt. And I just think it's very smart of you to position yourself as that the new blood, the fresh air. Here's what I can bring to your company. And more importantly, you're finding people that recognize that as a strength because not everybody does, right? And I'm sure you've encountered that as well. You get a little pushback from people who are like, "No, this is how we've been doing this for the last 40 years," and they don't want to move forward. So, what are your thoughts on that?
100%. I mean, there's so many of those brands. I think that's the hardest thing. I mean, I would say one of the hardest things is there's so many people who are stuck in that mindset. You go look at the space on a broader sense. There are so many projects that could so easily succeed if they could get out of that mindset. I think a big example, Kevin Hart launched a project and sold 5%, I believe. Like, this is one of the most notable people. I've watched so many films he's in, and obviously, that's not everything. There has to be so much more substance.
Yeah,
But this is someone with a Web 2 mindset that doesn't have any of that Web 3 blood. They weren't following anything that Web 3 did. They were the type of people going and buying Facebook ads to sell to Web3. Like, no,
yeah,
it does not work at all. And there's so many examples of that. And that's what makes, my job so beautiful is, these people need me, whether it's me or
they
someone
do.
else, like it has to be someone. And all of the people, I would say, I would reckon to say all of them that don't have that experience, whether it's me or anyone else, don't succeed. And there's countless
Yeah,
examples of that.
I love it. This is good. This is good. When you're talking to classic Web 2 mentality businesses, what are some of the points? Because you're saying you bring this like fresh mindset to the table. What are some of your selling points when you're kind of giving your pitch on why that help, kind of break through that really, really tough kind of wall that they've built of like, this is the only way to do things?
I show them how I launch projects. My pitch, the way I sell my service is I walk people through launch. I walk them through one of my previous launches. I walk them through what we started with, the first steps we followed to, the actual success or failure of the launch, and really all of the steps that go into that. And it's for all of them, it's eye opening because I think all of them, kind of as we've been talking about, come in with these presumptions of what marketing looks like, how projects become successful, and I come in and essentially show them like, hey, this is someone big I've worked with, and this is what I did for them. This is how we did it. And it's just eye opening to them because I guarantee you over half of the things I do, most people don't even know exist. You go look
Right.
at, I encourage you to go find Utopia's avatar's first post. It had 50,000 views. All it was Utopia's logo. That did not blow up inorganically. Like there organically. Like there is so much work that actually goes into making every single post successful. There's so much work behind the scenes. People think stuff organically blows up. Nothing organically blows up. I think
Mm,
Goblin Town is a great example. That was no coincidence. That was by truth. No one knew it at the time, but there was a huge team behind that. That
Yep.
success was engineered from day one. And
Yep.
that
yeah,
means that there is a path to success. It's not just random. It's not just stuff blowing up. There's conversations going on underground that actually make projects successful. And that's what these brands don't know about. And that's what I opened their eyes up to. I have different assets just to kind of show the different things I work with. The first thing I have, and I'm sure you guys have this, is I index every person I meet. I have a spreadsheet over, I think it's 600 cells long at this point, of every person I meet, exactly what they work on, if they're looking for work, their roles, their projects, everything about them, Twitter, LinkedIn, literally everything I can find about them
Yep.
because it's so valuable. When I get in these conversations and you have someone who probably knows 5 people who hold an NFT, just show them that I know 600 of the most valuable creators in the space and I have relationships with these people, and we can host AMAs, we can host events, we can have a wellness gathering. Like there's so much you can do with that, and it's so incredibly leverageable because I might just be this 21-year-old, but Jeremy Fall is not.
yeah,
Zeneca is not. People on this list
yep,
who I mean I can who I can leverage, people who I can pull upon whenever I go to do launch, or people that I can plug them into or start conversations with. I might just be a 21-year-old, but they're most definitely not. And that's a lot of how I sell my service and how I position myself as a consultant.
I love it. That's fantastic. Which is a great way to talk about it. And Maddie, so when I was gone, what did you guys talk about? Like Phoenix till now, or where are we at in
yeah.
the story?
Yeah, we went forward and how he developed, really making the consulting business a real business and not just kind of a pet project that was succeeding and doing very well. How he legitimized it and what he was doing to start that process, and then we just talked about some of the misconceptions that Web 2 has, and working with Web 2,
Right.
and how he was able to market through those issues. And so, yeah,
So one question, and then I think we can kind of man, we've been talking for over 2 hours, and it seemed like 15 minutes so far. But I want to ask. You have dealt, and we I thought I have dealt with a lot of people, and when when we first talked, I was like, "Damn, he's got me trumped." Because we still have full time jobs. You've got. I wish I was 21. That's just fortunately life gives you more responsibilities, so I can't spend as much time as you're able to do. Um, what with everything that you've seen, and now that you know kind of cookie cutter how these projects are launching, I think this is a very valuable lesson that you can teach our community and that anybody that watches this in the future. What in your mind are warning signs to look out for on when new projects start? What are your big warning signs, and when are you immediately like, let's just not waste our time, especially now in a bear market, right? Like there's just a lot of little flips, but I still think there's probably universal truths no matter what the market is. But I'm interested to hear what you have to say now that you've had so much exposure to so many different people and types of projects.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I would say, I mean, if I had to give you one answer, and this might seem a little weird, I would say the best metric across the board to quickly vet a project. Obviously, there's a lot more involved. I would say the quickest thing is followers in common. If you follow good people in the space, that like I would say across the board, the only thing you can't fake is followers in common. You can go buy followers, you can buy engagement, you can bot spaces, you can bot your Discord. You cannot buy followers in common. There's nothing you can do about that. If you go look at every successful project against every failed project in the short term, I'm talking purely into a launch time.
Right.
I would say the most accurate metric that equates to successful marketing to successful and profitable launch, the most universal sign is going to be followers in common. You go look at Memeland, I have 1,000 in common with them. You go look at, most botted projects that might have more engagement, might have more Discord members. I might have 10 in common with them. And,
Yep.
I think that's across the board one of the most valuable metrics and probably the quickest way to vet a project and the red flag I look for right off the bat if I'm looking at anything.
Right. I'm so glad that you nailed that because that is the organic solution that I've come up with myself, but figured people like yourself had the same answer and you nailed it because that's exactly what I look at as well.
Yeah.
Anything
Love it.
else? Obviously that in my mind is the number one metric, but anything else that you have on your list?
The other thing I want to add to followers in common, and the reason it's so valuable, it doesn't only tell me if a project's marketing well, it tells me a lot about the team. If you go see a project with, I mean, even if it's a big brand project, there's so many, you go look at them, they might have 150,000 followers. I have 20 in common. That doesn't just tell me that this is a poorly marketed project. This tells me that this is a project with intent to deceive. They're
Yes.
going and actively buying followers. They're actively botting their Twitter spaces. They're doing what they need to do to give a false picture to an investor. And what that tells me is you're not confident enough in your own product to let it stand on its own legs. If you're not confident enough for someone to objectively look at your product and decide whether they want to buy it, then you shouldn't have a product.
Right.
And that's I think the core lesson behind these followers in common and why it's so important. And I think for every person, that metric's different. For me, I look for 100 out of every 10,000 in common. And if anything's generally over that, I would say if it's anything double that, if I have 100 in common, 20,000 followers, something fishy's going on. Anything greater than that, they're very actively botting followers, building inorganically, trying to appear better than they are.
Yeah. And so I'm actually glad you said that last thing because the natural follow up is how do you know you're following the right people? Now, it's one thing to be said for someone like you who has organically learned over time the underground, the movers and shakers of this. But for a typical investor or someone new to it, what is your strategy in trying to figure out? Is it finding your first couple legit projects and figuring out who they follow? What take us through the method to your madness on who are the right people to follow.
So there's a few things to unpack there. First of all, what makes any project successful, the most important thing is always the community. being in communities, following community members. Community is another thing that cannot be faked. And it's pretty easy to see through followers in common. Plug yourself into communities because, there's a lot of really influential people, but at the end of the day, the people who actually move markets are the individuals. It's the
Mm,
masses, and so following and staying plugged into a large enough demographic of those people is incredibly valuable. You go look at my followers in common with a lot of these big projects. A lot of them are those small people. I mean, just to be transparent, one of the really important parts of a launch is influencer outreach, building followers in common. You go look at any of my projects, day one, before the first post, you'll have 100 followers in common with them. And that's because we're building that number, because we know that's such an important thing that people look at, and that can be faked. What cannot be faked is the individuals, the community members. No one DMs these small community members to go follow. So I think, first of all, the first layer is those community members. It's incredibly important to engage with communities, to follow people in communities, and to, I mean, really be a community member yourself,
yeah.
understand how the market flows, but also following the other side, the creators. I think that's kind of harder. I think to a degree you can follow just people with a lot of followers. I think, of course, there's pitfalls with that. There's people you don't want to be following, but that's a lot harder to vet. I think the market does a relatively good job of pitting those people out, because a very good engagement farming method is FUD. If you can be on the front end of exposing something, you can build an entire brand off of it. There's I don't remember. I lost my train of thought, but there's so many cases of that. People just getting exorbitant amounts of engagement out of it. So there's clearly incentive to rat these people out. So I think, yeah, I think on that at that portion, I would say follow the people you like, because those are the people who you want to have in common. If you have a community and you want to figure out if you like it, go see if people you like follow it,
Right.
because chances are a lot of those people are educating themselves and deciding if this is something they want to be a part of, and if they're following it, that's probably somewhere that you might be interested in being. And I think that plays out across the board.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that,
So
and I think that's a good feedback. Go ahead, Manny.
yeah, so my next question is we've been talking, I'm assuming, almost exclusively Twitter, correct?
Yeah.
So my next question is this. In this process, and because you're consulting, are you exclusive Twitter? What do you
No.
think about other platforms? What do you, a two-part question. What do you think about other platforms and their effectiveness in this space? One. And two, there is a lot of people talking about Twitter and recent changes, potential changes, and things like that. Do you think that Twitter will remain the main venue? I'm curious your thoughts on that.
So it's hard to say. The first thing, other platforms. As I've been saying this whole time, one of the most important things is meaningful differentiation. One of
Yeah.
the ways you can meaningfully differentiate yourself and reach a new audience is through different platforms, because everyone has the platforms they live on. For example, the Smurfs I'm working with right now, they did a collaboration with Lens. Are you familiar with Lens by chance?
Mm-mm.
I know
So they're
Google Lens.
different Lens. So
And
they're
apparently Google
decent.
Lens knows us. Fun fact. But anyway, keep going.
So yeah, Lens, quick summary from my understanding, is a decentralized social platform, kind of in the DeFi sphere. Most of their users are more so crypto than NFT native. It's really that audience, and we actually had an incredible amount of success in that partnership. And you go look at our engagement. I mean, a lot of that really wasn't from me, because we brought in this new audience. We onboarded a new group of people, and we were actually the most successful post on Lens. We were their highest interaction NFT post was the partnership, and we actually onboarded 13,000 people to our game through that partnership with Lens. And it really shows you, like, that meaningful differentiation made such a difference, because most people don't know right now that the Smurfs are in the space. Most people don't know that, and that's the
Yeah.
case of a launch. It's so incredibly hard to reach a majority market share unless you market perfectly. But bringing in that new audience was so powerful for us, because those are the people who who mint an NFT. Those are the people who might, I mean, for a lot of them, Smurfs might be their heart project, or Smurfs might be their creature world. You know, it's an opportunity to bring people who can get emotionally invested in an NFT because they haven't gone through rug pulls, they haven't gone through scams, they're new to the space. You know, they find a community, and if you actually go look at the community again, you know, we haven't been able to do that much yet just because of the way we've laid out our strategy, and they've already had so much success just building off of that ability to onboard people. So that's kind of to answer your first question. I think yes, definitely. I think, you know, Instagram, I don't think is effective. I think there's platforms that are effective and ineffective. I think the platforms that are effective are the ones that you can onboard the right people through. You know, for example, Lens was such a good collaboration. You know, we onboarded so many DeFi people. You know, it's so good to get those people in our ecosystem because they already know crypto. They know how to bridge. They know how to get money onto Polygon to play our game. Like that's not new to them. You know, if we try to
Yeah.
market that on Instagram, absolutely no chance that succeeds. You know, you look at a lot of projects that try to market on Instagram, most of them fail because, you know, the actual fit to the consumers using the platform in a proportional sense isn't there. And so that's where I think a lot of that answer lies, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no.
Okay.
And it's
All right.
strategically picking platforms that make sense to your audience, kind of back to what you were saying.
How do you? But what the part two of that? Twitter is changing. Any thoughts on that? Do you think that will make it better? Do you think that will improve the quality? You know, in terms of the flow, I think you know, there's talk about kind of like how the video content can change, post length can change. Do you think that will change the way some of these things have to be marketed in a good way? Do you think this will push the right people that we want in this space into Twitter or away from Twitter? Curious your thoughts on that.
100%. So I think, yeah, I think it's positive for Twitter. I think a big problem with Twitter, probably one of the biggest problems that I see in my experience in Twitter, is I think Twitter for a long time just kind of put people in a box. You know, they're like, we
Yeah.
want you to consume media the way we want you to consume it. For example, the most annoying thing for me, I have to host Twitter Spaces on my phone. My headset does not plug into my phone. I can't use a headset. I have to use my phone.
Yeah.
And that's really annoying, you know? Like
Yep.
there's so many actually user experience things where they actually put active barriers to force people to consume on their phone, which is something that I've seen Elon Musk, I mean, to a large degree actually making changes to the platform that I think have really, I mean, I think they're really starting to affect the user experience, and not even in the aspect of like the interoperability between like using a phone or a computer, but I think a
Yeah.
lot of those things are on the roadmap because I think what these changes are doing is they're taking down barriers and they're making it a more creatively inclusive platform. You know, for example, changing video length. You know, I
yeah,
don't see that as something that could have a poor effect on anyone.
I
You
agree.
know, all it does is it allows people to better engage their community. You know, if you want to continue pushing content the same way you can, but it gives people new avenues to meaningfully differentiate themselves on the platforms that they can best engage their community
right.
and, I mean, better portray vision, better connect with people. And so I'm all for it. I think personally, I think Twitter is a pretty good platform. I think I don't know if Twitter's going to be around. I think there's so much potential in blockchain, and I think we're going to see a lot more of these blockchain social platforms come about. I'm actually working on one right now with Fusion XYZ.
Yep.
Like there are a lot of these around and people see the potential. I think there's so much potential in blockchain enabled social media. And I think it's going to be really interesting to see how that kind of plays out. I think the big thing, of course, is going to be, can someone enabled by blockchain differentiate themselves in a meaningful enough way where people choose to stop using Twitter because now Twitter's now too inconvenient to not to be on. You know what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
I think it's hard to say. I think Discord's a terrible platform for NFTs. I think Discord's definitely either going to go away or they're going to start catering to Web3, which, I mean, to my knowledge, they've actively said they're not going to do that, but I wouldn't be surprised to see them change that because that's
Right.
a huge opportunity. And they're
Discord's
100%
atrocious.
going to,
I hate it.
yeah, it's so bad. So,
So
yeah, I
yeah,
think Twitter here, Discord gone.
yeah.
Okay.
I would be happy with that to just communicate in Twitter and email, to be honest, because managing messages in Discord is my nightmare.
Dude, Yeah, I mean, you speak my language. I'm again in over 400 chats. I have to have right now. I have 5 pinned spreadsheets to help me manage communications.
Yeah.
You know how
Yeah.
easily that could be managed if the only feature they would need to add to eliminate pretty much that entire problem for me is adding DMs to folders. Like
Right.
there's these really tiny fixes that if they had any care in the world about Web3 or scaling their platform better for people who are using it
Mhm.
differently, that it could so easily be fixed. And that's why I think Twitter doesn't have a lot of those barriers. I think it does have them, but I don't think a lot of them are there. I think Discord has much bigger barriers that for a lot of platforms aren't going to be that hard for them to
Right.
change, specifically on communication, and I think even more specifically in DMs and from scams and hacks.
Yeah, I mean, you would think that a communication platform, which Discord is, you would think they would understand the basics of just lumping conversations together and making DMs more manageable. But I guess
Yeah,
not. I mean, I think
Yeah.
but let's, to their defense, they really evolved because of the voice chat. And that's what they really, I mean, listen, we literally do our stream on Discord because the voice chat is the least laggy thing out there. If we try to do
Yeah.
this on Skype, it's a nightmare, right? Or if we try to
Brutal.
do this on Zoom, it's a nightmare. Discord figured that out, and that's what they were meant for in the first place, right? Um,
100%.
so, Maddie, any other questions? I got one
No.
question, and then, damn it, my question fleeted my mind. Well, now that my question's completely gone, um, let's just move on to the future. What does the future of CK look like? Next 3 to 6 months, what projects are you excited about? What are you excited about you're working on personally that you can share?
Yeah.
We look at this as building a friendship. Can't wait to have you on in the future to touch base. But get us next through the next 3 to 6 months of 2023 for you.
Yeah, man. So, I mean, there's tons of big developments, most of which I can't speak about. I would say, biggest things, my consultancy. I've continued to have success. And I think a big part of it for me and this kind of new phase of my consultancy is working with the right people. And I haven't touched on that this much, but that's a huge thing I've learned, A to Z through my experiences. This isn't meant to be alone. And if you're not alone, you just will be more successful,
Right.
without a doubt.
Yeah.
And a big part of that, coming back to meaningful differentiation is getting meaningfully different people involved. Not more people just for the sake of bandwidth, but people who bring unique value to my business and actually help me develop it in an influential and in a important way. And that's something I've really found and something I'm doing a lot better in the new year and something that's helped me scale. The reason I have the time, even though I think right now I'm managing like 5 projects, I mean, I'm hopping on a call for like 3 hours right now. I have other people working for me and with me who not only allow me to have more bandwidth, but actually contribute value that I'm not capable of bringing to the business. Like I have one guy, Tom, I work really closely with on my consultancy. I'm working on Smurfs with him. I did a project called Odyssey with him. Really valuable guy. He's brought so much value to my business. And I'm so thankful that I met him because the thing I'm worst at is intentional conversations and understanding the needs of the projects we work with. And that's something he's incredibly good at. I'm incredibly blunt. I'll get on a call and like if there's something wrong, like I mean, I say it as it is, and that's a good trait. But whenever you're playing around with people's visions, it's
Right.
a very
Yeah.
you got to be delicate.
Yeah.
There's so much emotion there, and that's something that I'm just not well equipped to handle. And I found that by working with these people, I mean, really deliver value in a way that I couldn't before. And so that's, I would say, from my consultancy perspective, that's a big thing you're going to be seeing from me in 2023 is partnering up with people. And I actually don't do single advisory anymore. That's something I've moved away from. I do everything with a co-consultant just to like share a little bit under the hood with these consultancies from a marketing perspective.
Yeah.
There's 2 main segments. You have the client facing and you have the project or collaboration or behind the scenes back end work.
Mhm.
And I'm
Mhm.
not great at the client facing. I can do it. I managed it for a long time and I was pretty good at it, but I'm not great at it. What I'm great at is I'm really great at getting in the dirt and actually influencing the project, because the client facing is useless without the other side.
Right.
And the other side isn't really that useful without the client facing, because it's so important to give them a good experience. They're the ones paying you.
Right.
You
Right.
have to cater to them. And it's so
100%.
important. I talk so much about meaningful differentiation. When I'm talking on 5 projects, I don't or when I'm working on 5 projects, I don't have the time to cater and to really explore how to be meaningfully different with every project, because I'm busy doing the other side of it. So bringing on a co-consultant who has more bandwidth and has more opportunity to help explore what meaningful differentiation looks like for their specific project
Right.
is so incredibly important. And that's really the value Tom has brought into my business.
I love that. And so building that, the other projects that you can't talk about, um, I love it, man. And I think what's really cool is even through this conversation, I've actually been able to see your mindset grow in just such a short amount of time, and you already can continue to do that. And dude, what I'm really jealous of is you're 20 years younger than I am. So you have a long time I mean, we have a long time still. But to be blunt, I was not thinking like you when I was 21. I was in a totally different sphere. So it's just really impressive and cool to see that. And I was literally talking to Matt before you came on, and I was like, man, I am, one of the things that we want to get better at is not talking to all people our age, right? I want a wide range of ages because they perceive the world differently, they use tech differently. And then I also want to double down on getting more females on because they have a completely different voice than Maddie and I do, and I want that to be heard as well. And that diversity just brings so much more value to our community and anyone else who watches our content, right?
100%.
Yeah, man.
100%.
Maddie,
So
anything before I kind of start winding her down?
yeah, so well, two things. One, Mikey, I want to ask one of the final questions myself because I want to ask it a little bit differently to CK.
Uh-huh.
But can you give us just mm, maybe just an overview, just because we've had builder's blocks sitting there on the screen this whole time, and if somebody's sitting there like, what is that? Even again, super just overview. Can you maybe give us a little teaser trailer? What are we looking at?
Yeah, man, for sure, for sure. So, I mean, just to back up a little bit, everything I do outside of my consultancy is generally to address problems I have in my consultancy. For
Mhm.
example, that is what the builder's block is. That is a portion of what houses that I'm working out with Dare. Shout out to him if he's still in here. But
He is.
yeah, I mean, across the board, that's a lot of what I do. Just to give some context to everything I'm working on, I'd say my two main ventures beside my consultancy, 100% house and the builder's block. Those are going to be insane. Definitely be watching those. Those are two of my highest conviction builds. You look at everything I'm working on. I've worked with these brands and I say goodbye to them after I launch them. House is something I don't want to say goodbye to. I can't, because it's something that I know is going to be so important and so influential. And you look at what a lot of these projects do, I mean, long term, even with the IP, a lot of these just aren't successful. But I know the builder's block. I know house is going to be successful, not because we're backed by Bose or CNN, but because we're thinking the right way, we're building the right way, and we have the right people involved. And so, yeah, I'm also working on Fusion XYZ. For context, they're a software development team building software that will change the space. We're building different tools to actually better engage a community. Again, just to kind of share the different problems I'm solving with these. For me, a big portion of what Fusion's solving the problem of engaging a community, identifying top contributors, giving call to action on engagement. There's different problems I've identified through the marketing of these projects that put barriers in place to stop me and stop my brands from better engaging their consumer and better
Hmm.
better appealing to them. And that's something that Fusion does incredibly well. The
Yeah, we're
problem that
talking to their
House,
founders. I'm talking to their founders now. I hope I can get them on. That'll be a good combo.
yeah, man. No, they're awesome. You should definitely have them on. They're definitely two of my most favorite people to work with. I think the thing that makes them different that I really love with about them is they're I mean, they're not money driven. They're incredibly relational. And I think that's so important. Like they constantly talk to, me and Bongalo and the different people involved as we're as a family. Like it's not at all transactional. Not even in the slightest. And that's one of the things I've found, and one of the things that I've really learned and gleaned from working with them and brought to, I mean, everything I do in this space. But no, really great team. I really, really hope you get to have them on.
That's awesome. Maddie, anything else?
I didn't even
Yeah.
get to the builder's block.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
go.
I was just
Keep
saying
on
that's
going.
what I wanted to hear. So that was going to be what I was going to say.
So
So builder's
yes,
block.
yes, builder's block. The next problem, builder's block at its core, I would say the biggest problem I have with my consultancy, and where the majority of the value of my consultancy lives, is creating a vessel through which we can better communicate from creators to individuals. I talked at the very beginning, I touched on an idea of one of the biggest problems in the space is you can get an allow list without knowing what a project's doing.
Right.
The core problem, I think this is across the board one of the biggest problems in the space, is the communication structure we have from creators to individuals. People don't learn. Ether and Valhalla, for example, I encourage everyone in the audience, think about them. I'm willing to bet that no one in the audience knows what they're doing, because nobody really learns about these projects. Everyone knows they're hyped, everyone knows they're going to make money if they get it, but no one puts in the thought to actually learn. And this hurts the space so much, because you
Yes.
have projects with real visions, with real intentions, who want to apply use cases for Web3, but only everyone who's in their community is there to make a buck. And that's why we're in a bear market. You look at why there's not liquidity. Everyone who is here to buy NFTs and hold them and be part of communities don't have money anymore, because they were bag holders over and over and over. I was a bag holder. Yeah, I made a lot of potential money, but in the end I lost money because I was emotionally invested, and people have to be emotionally invested to hold NFTs and for NFTs to do well. You look at anything that does well long term, all of them have emotionally invested communities. And that's so important. And I think a huge reason why we don't see that anymore is because the demographic left are people who don't educate themselves. They're people who are masters of getting allow lists without knowing what a project's doing. Myself included. Before I got into all this, that's like a lot of how I made any money in the space, was getting allow lists. And yeah, a lot of what the builders block is, to give the high level, it's a platform where builders can share and promote their vision across the space.
Yeah.
And we're doing that in so many ways, and we're doing so many great things that I wish I could share, but that's the real high level of it.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm glad that you shared that, because it's conversations that Maddie and I have talk all the time. There's so much money that we, as a brand, could be going after on just stupid pre-sale allow list and different opportunities that way. But we know that the long game is the way to go, and building meaningful relationships with people like you and doing things for free, not all the time, but because we know in the end of the day, people are going to come back to us and say, hey, you threw us a bone when we didn't have much money and we were trying to grow. Like that mentality is honestly what wins in life. And it gets very diluted in a space like this, that's constant frenzy and hype and people chasing money. But it's going to be interesting to see people like you, people like us, that keep on going, and how that plays out in the long run. Because let's be honest, NFTs in the form they have not been around for that long. We're talking 5-10 years. What happens then? And I can't wait to see the people that rise to the top through that lens, right?
Yeah.
100%.
So just right off the bat, just because we used to ask this question, and I know Mikey won't ask it because we don't ask it much anymore. But you're in a unique position, I think, to answer this, and that is, mm, you've been on here with us for almost, we're coming up on 3 hours, and what we do by getting into your background, who you are, what you stand for, Mike and I believe is something that's unique in the space, right? The way we have this conversation and really kind of extrapolate a lot from one person and say, hey, here's what you're doing. You've met some very influential people in the space. I'd be curious, is there anybody now that you've been sitting here with us that just pops in your head that you're like, you know what, this would be a great person to be in this kind of an arena with Mikey and Matt?
Yeah, man. I think I mean, yeah, no, there definitely are. There's people I'd love to kind of put in the hot seat just so I can,
Yeah.
I mean, get that higher level and deep understanding of exactly their thoughts and who they are. So I mean, 100%. There's yeah, there's
Okay.
definitely people.
Do us a favor. I mean, it doesn't have to be now, but man, we'd love to hear some of those top like names that popped up in your head. Um, because if it's popping up in your head, it's probably in other people's head as well. And
Yeah,
that's
man.
for Mikey and I. We want to be talking to people who have a story to tell, and so I think that would be a really cool thing for us that I'd like to hear about. So very cool. All right, Mikey, what do you got?
I mean, I think I'm ready to wind it down. I mean, we've had an
Yeah.
amazing conversation. It's almost been 3 hours. I think the natural follow up to Maddie's question is, so you do your own spaces. You've been a part of a bajillion spaces. Love to hear any feedback or how you thought your time on midlife compares to what you're typically exposed to in the space.
And this is the
Yeah.
question I was going to tweak.
Okay, go ahead.
What I'd love to hear again, specifically because you've done so many things and created marketing strategies, I'd like to hear something that you liked about what we did here today and with midlife, but I'd also like to hear something you think, because again, tremendous amount of experience in tweaking marketing strategies. What's something you think that we could improve
Yeah,
with our
love
strategy, with
both.
our marketing?
Yeah. No, 100%. So the first question, what did I like? I preach about meaningful differentiation. This is not like any space I've gotten on. I'm sure you've heard that on every space you do
Yeah,
because nobody's doing this. And I think this is so incredibly good. I think this is, I think this is really good. I really enjoyed this conversation. I do a lot of spaces. I think this is, easily one of my favorite, if not my favorite, just because, you know, we get to go so much deeper. Most of my spaces are an hour, and I think that's really good for a specific demographic. But I think what you guys are doing is so important for the people who have the time to go deep. A big part of my media brand, and this is something where I think you guys shine. A huge part of it, and a big part of the plan we've put in is, appealing to different demographics and really engaging those different demographics. I'm sure something you identify in the space being older, everyone's young. Why is everyone 18 to 25? It's because those are the people who the space engages. You look at Twitter shows, you look at, Twitter posts, you look at communities. Who do people award? Who do people give allowance to? Who do people push in the space? They push the people who have the time to be in a community 9 hours a day.
right.
And that's not everyone. And that's why it's so important. And that's why it's so important for people like me and you to create content that appeals to that different demographic. For you guys, that's the people who want to go deep, because there's so much stuff that I shared on the space that nobody else knows about me.
Yeah,
And that's awesome. That's why this is so good, is because there's so many people out there who I know would love to hear these things about me. And I'm just going to send them a recording of this, and it's going to be great because
thanks, man.
I don't have to do 3-hour conversations with every person I meet, but
Yeah,
it's, yeah, it really comes down to the meaningful differentiation. I think that's what I love about this. I think it's so powerful because you're going to be able to appeal to a different demographic in a way that no one has yet. And I think once you start getting more and more of the right guests on, and I think when the bull market comes, whenever people start getting onboarded, I think you're going to scale to a crazy degree, like I had, or like I'm sure I'm going to, because I think that's what it's about. You guys found your segment, and you're doing a really great job at it. And I would never even try to compete with you guys because I could not do this as well as you guys do it. This
thanks,
is
man.
not my segment of the space. And I think anyone who's going to try to do the same thing is going to land in a similar spot because I'm sure you can preach this, but I'm sure there's been so much tweaking, so much thought that actually goes into the experience, even from you guys first communicating with me. Like I actually got to experience, and I put actual thought into like, wow, this is a great user flow. You guys did a good job of onboarding me, like from the first DM to the waiting room to like actually getting me into the space. Like there's things that I want to take from my own business. I love that waiting room. I thought that was so cool. Like actually being able to kind of brief me on it, you know, it made me more comfortable coming into the space and putting intentional time and thought into the actual user experience from the creators coming on, because those are the people who, I mean, for the most part, those are the people bringing the value. You know, they're the people who have stories to tell. They're what makes a lot of this so valuable. And so I think you guys have done an incredible job of crafting a user flow that's really good.
Thank
It's
you,
really
man.
good. So I
Thank
think,
you.
I mean, honestly, even looking at it, I don't even think I know of anything that I would change with that. I think you guys did a really great job. If I had to throw anything out, and this is something I'm doing in my own business, I don't even know if this makes sense for you guys because this is off the top of my head. Something that I think is really powerful is creating visuals just to go with everything, which I believe you guys have that, even like with the YouTube you mentioned, like my the builder's block Twitter being on the screen, like there you have, if you're not doing visuals, that's something I would potentially explore doing, whether it's an overview, because not only is that great
I
content, but
like
it's
that.
content that appeals to a different demographic. I encourage you, go look at my Twitter, go look at the content that I put together with Bongalo. The reason we put out written content is because a lot of people don't have time to listen to a 3 hour discussion. You know, whether that means a recap for you guys or whether that means you put together even something beforehand so people can prepare themselves for the space. Let's say they get the bullet points ahead of time on a graphic so they can walk in with the same knowledge you guys have. Like I think there's so many ways that you can potentially explore bringing in a new content form that appeals to a different demographic so you can have a different audience engage in your show and in your community that might not be able to listen to these 3 hour shows. Does that make
Dude,
sense?
no, I love it. And yeah, that's one thing. We're working with partners now, and we're actually starting, and we could talk about this offline, but one of the main things that's the no-brainer is think about how many amazing moments we had in a 3 hour conversation. We just worked with a client, well, not client, we like to call them friends. We made 40 videos out of our one 3 hour podcast, right?
Wow.
Most people can't do that.
Yeah.
But there's such treasure trove after treasure trove of content that we have. We're actually in the opposite position of we have too much content and we can't physically handle it all.
Yeah.
But your initial feedback, man, gave me chills. It really makes me. I mean, dude, you have now been, that makes 100% feedback of we're doing the right thing. People enjoy what we're doing. I think we've proven a business model at this point. It also made me think Irritated had similar. We got her to talk about her strict upbringing and just this complete juxtaposition of going to school in Cali at like Berkeley and being raised in a traditional Muslim, I think it was a Muslim home, right?
Yep,
Uh,
exactly.
and at the end, she said, I cannot believe that you got me to talk about that live for multiple hours online. But Maddie and I always say, streaming to no one on Twitch for 2 years, that helped. That's what helped. And these are the things that you'll think about as you continue to grow CK and it took me a long time to figure this out is there's many times in your life where you're like, why the fuck am I doing this? And then you look back and you're like, oh, a light bulb goes off. This is why I was doing that, because it taught
Yeah.
me a skill that I didn't know I quite needed yet. And that's a prime example of what Matt got very good filling dead space because the only people in chat were bots.
Exactly.
So
Well
yeah,
said.
but thanks for that
That's awesome,
feedback, man. And
Yeah,
then
that was wonderful.
our final question, and then we'll wind it down. I'll let Matt do his closing comments. I'll do mine. Is do you have any questions for us? Because we just rattled them off for almost 3 hours for you, man. And we want to leave that open. And if you don't have any questions, totally fine. But we're here for you and you can ask us questions at any moment.
Yeah, for sure. I want to give one last piece of feedback as well. I think
Sure.
the other side, a good product, I think Web3 specifically does this to a harsh degree. A good product doesn't matter without good marketing. And I honestly don't know what you're doing on the marketing front, but if you actually, I mean, as we start to roll out the builder's block, you'll see there's probably as much intentional thought going into how can we best find our consumer, and not only have them coming to us but actually go to them. How can we get to our consumer rather than just having them come to us? And that's a huge part of what I'm 100% certain is going to make us so incredibly successful, and something that honestly I have no idea if you're doing it, but I think it's something really important that you should think about, because you have a killer product. You just need to find the right method to get it to the right ears. And I think what you're doing is really great. Just to share my thoughts and my insight from the things that have made me successful. We talked about Phoenixes. What made Phoenixes so successful is brand association. We brought on 60 groups into one space, and it brought in such a big audience. What you guys are doing incredibly well is you're bringing on people with a story to tell. You start bringing on the biggest people in the space and having them share, I mean, like, more intimate details. Like, you're going to build a crazy audience off of that, because you're going to have, the Ryan Carsons of the world, the Zenecas, the Me's, the NFT boys come on and bring, probably, let's say 10% of our audience comes and listens, and
Hmm.
1% of them keep listening over and over and over. And
Yep.
it's that retention, which I know you guys are going to retain incredibly well, because this was a killer space. And I think for the people who stayed, my intuition was they enjoyed it,
Yeah.
because I mean I enjoyed it. So I think you're going to do a killer job of the retention. It's just continuing to be consistent and bringing on the right people, which I know you're going to kill.
Yeah, and people like you in our repertoire are going to help us do that. And it's funny you throw out a Ryan Carson. I'm talking to him, and we're talking to others people. And Maddie and I, we're not stopping at NFTs. We've built a company because we want to build an empire that can last generations, all through very simple, being genuine, connecting with humans, and being kind and paying it forward. So we will be branching out, and we have
Yeah.
some actors coming on in the future, and it's not always going to be just so Web3 focused. We're just interesting people with interesting stories, and obviously the bigger audiences they bring, the better it looks for us. I mean, we did very well in the bull market because randomly, because of our content, Dex from Phantom Network, he didn't agree to any podcast or AMA except for ours, because he watched our content and he was like, those guys are actually cool and genuine. And so at the height of the frenzy of Phantom Network, we had them on, and we had over close to 1,000 people watching us on Twitch, right? And we had
Yeah.
maybe 8 people watch us before
Yeah.
that. And literally a project coming on Thursday, randomly, a guy that found us, believe it or not, during Phantom Network height, he was like, dude, I've been watching you guys ever since. And he's like, I just haven't had the right project, but he's like, these are the people, and I would love for you to talk to them. So to your point,
Yeah.
is that product market fit, and we got to work better on that. And I'm working hard on that, but love to continue to talk to you offline
For
about
sure.
that. And I think it's a great, great insight.
Love it.
100%. Happy to help how I can.
All right. Well, amazing. No further questions, just more of a comment. I appreciate that. Nothing else, because with that, we can just kind of wind her down.
Good.
All right,
Let's do
cool.
it.
Maddie, I'll let you go, and then I'll close it out and talk about what the rest of the week for Midlife looks like.
All right. I love it. Well, a couple things, man. This has been an enlightening conversation. Mike and I get to talk to some pretty amazing people, and we've had, now over 100 streams. We've talked to a lot of different founders and people who are movers and shakers. And to Mikey's point, I love having a diversity of people from different backgrounds, young people, old people, CEOs, people in marketing, whatever it might be, right? Different backgrounds. What I love about our conversation is exactly what you said you promote to these Web2 companies, you brought to this conversation. A fresh perspective, a young perspective, and not young in the way an old person says it, kind of like lording over you. Young is in truly fresh. You're moving. You are in the space. You're in the demographic of people that are going to move this space forward. And I love to hear it, man. You saying maturity is valuing your future self more than your current self. You are demonstrating that. And when you say things like the greatest key is actual intentional thought towards an effort, you can tell that everything you do, you're thinking about. Even if you have to learn it the hard way, even if it was, I'm going to paint shoes that look like NFTs and then learn this isn't scalable and then create a model that is more scalable, right? You're iterating at an incredibly fast rate. And what excites me about that is that started from, you know, you having a couple early wins in the trading space, recognizing you're not good at trading, and evolving that through alpha calls all the way into this consulting, and it's still iterating. And that's what gives me a tremendous amount of here's what it's done. Just hearing that story makes me very excited about Builder's Block, even though I still know very little about it. Because everything you've done has been one step improvement, if not more steps improvement on what you've already done, and what you're doing right now is fantastic. And so, really exciting conversation. Thank you for being so articulate and answering things in a clear way. And man, it seems like the direction can only be up. Like I said, if you're winning in a I'm sorry, if you're winning in a bear market like this, I agree with you. You are positioning yourself strategically. You're intentionally thinking about how is this going to play out when it gets crazy again. And I think you've positioned yourself very well. It's been a pleasure, man. I really look forward to continuing our conversations and our friendship.
Yeah, man. 100%. Great chatting.
And to add on that, I'm just going to say, of course, everything Maddie just said, because that was beautiful. I'll just add, man, the first time I talked to you, I knew immediately you were different than 99% of the people I talked to, and that I knew I wanted to be able to involve you in what we were doing and continue to be involved in what you're doing in whatever form that comes, and that you were a good person and friend to have. So that was one. You immediately gave that off just by a quick half-hour conversation. Two, uh, like I hinted before, this is the beginning of a now it's 3 hour friendship online. We mean it. Maddie and I mean it when we say we select our friends in this space in a meaningful way, and when we do build friendships with people, we want to win together and we want to grow, and that is literally our main. Again, back to the yes, money is nice to have, but if it's the only thing that drives you, you're going to end up extremely sad. And what's driving us is to finding people like you and winning together, and how can we help each other grow. So I cannot wait to see that, especially once we hit the next bull. It's going to be insane, and we're going to have a blast, and we're going to hug it out one day in real life at a conference. I know it's going to happen. And then finally, three, I would just want to reiterate what Matt said, that with the intention with which you speak at your current age is just so impressive to me, because again, I was far from that. And if you keep that, and you keep that mindset, and you keep that intentionality, you can be fucking Elon Musk. So keep it up, man. And I think you're doing it for all the right reasons. And just was so cool to hear you literally kind of self-realize your teachings as you're talking through, the last year and a half of your life in this space. And how you're already implementing those teachings and findings to make your business better. I loved the conversation about how you brought, I think his name was Tom, on, because you're better at not the client facing side. Like, just simple things like that are such a game changer in building better businesses in the future. So I really appreciated that insight.
Yeah, 100%. Thank you so much for having me on.
Absolutely.
It's been a really great conversation.
Hell yeah, man. And with that being said, We are out for Tuesday. We have a long stream to cut down for our boy CK. But we have the rest of the week coming up. Tomorrow we will be streaming for our friends Ape Tank at 4 p.m. PST. And then on Thursday, we have the Deviants NFT, who is part of Astronova, which is a bigger gaming platform. They are launching a free MMORPG. You know, Maddie and I love our Elder Scrolls, so it's right down our alley. And like I said, a avid community member back from the PXN days introduced us to the founders. Super cool people. Can't wait to have a conversation about NFT and gamings. And with that being said, we love you all. Midlife Crisis